John, we're not recording yet. There we go.
Okay, all right. Chair, I'd like to call the meeting to order for the May 18th meeting of the Transportation Infrastructure Commission, Mobility and Transportation Infrastructure Commission. Chair Abelson informed me that he will be joining the meeting later, probably around 7 o'clock. So we ask that we stick with our published agenda time, and he'll join us shortly. With that in mind, I'd like to have Leona call the meeting or have roll call.
Commissioner Dunlap.
Is it?
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Hughes.
Here.
And Commissioner Liu.
Here.
Okay, and I see we're joined by our council liaison, Council Member John Primuth, and the staff present is Public Works Director Shahid Abbas, and I see an Ann Ars. Is that one of your staff persons, Shahid?
No.
Okay, someone else. All right. Because Commissioner Abelson will be joining us later, if okay with the rest of the commissioners, I'd like to have a different order of items for about the first half hour. But before we do that, I'd like to have the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd like to call on Commissioner Hughes to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Everyone rise, please. Put your hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you, Council Member, for the flag.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. So I'd like to take a few items out of order so that we could address the primary item on our agenda when all commissioners are present. And I'd like to first address the minutes of the regular MTIC meeting of April 20th, 2021. Go to that as our first item. I believe Leona sent you a copy of a couple of edits that I recommended. Did you all have a chance to review them?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
I would second.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Liu, seconded by Commissioner Hughes.
Would you like a roll call? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Vice Chair Fisher.
Approved.
Commissioner Hughes.
Yes.
Commissioner Dunlap.
Yes.
And Commissioner Liu.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. And so our first item was really item number 3 on the agenda. I'd like to, as I indicated, jump around. I'd like to take the staff liaison communications, item number 12 on our agenda, as really the second item. So let's handle staff liaison communications. Do we have any from the staff liaison?
Liana, do we have any general public comments?
I do have one. But
I was going to handle general public comments next.
Oh, okay.
Any problem with that?
No, sir.
Okay. So staff liaison communications.
So, Shi, do you have anything?
So I think a question was asked earlier about the water conservation program, because of the foreseeable drought situation. So we very aggressively and regularly attend all our water board meetings. And they are seeing, but I think in our basin, they are not planning to impose any immediate measures of water conservation, what we are already doing. So they think that they can handle it at least for next 2 years. If it prolongs for 2 years, then they may consider of some additional measures. That being said, the city is aggressively pursuing water conservation programs day in and day night, and we never let it go. So city has made a significant contribution to the water conservation. Or water usage is already down by 30%. I think that's the maximum one can reduce. The studies have shown any further reduction of more than 30% will be require extraordinary measure, and it becomes very difficult. So we will continue with that aggressive programs for rest of the year and in the future year. And the council has really given us a lot of resources to just continue pushing the water conservation program. Last year, because of the pandemic, we were not been able to spend all the resources available to us. This was the only year, but moving forward, we have a very aggressive program. So hopefully we'll get through this another drought if we have to face that water situation. So that's all we have, and I know the staff continues to work on award of Rogan Fund project, which is design and construction of Fair Oaks infrastructure, traffic signal infrastructure. So we have selected a consultant. We are in the process of negotiating the final agreement with them. So hopefully that will be done soon, and we should be able to award the construction. Fair Oaks Phase 1 project, which was basically laying down the fiber optic communication along the Fair Oaks. We have a consultant on board. We'll be going to the council very soon to award the construction of that project. So that project will start very soon. We just have a small glitch in that project because when that budgeting was done for the project, at that point, the budgeting was not set aside for the project management and inspection purposes. So it was only a construction budget. And once we got the proposals came very high, which was substantially higher than we can anticipate. It's almost $250,000 for inspections. I had only $80,000 or $86,000 in the budget to pay for that. So we are trying to work out an agreement with the prospective consultant who was selected to perform the inspection. Hopefully we will reach an agreement. If not, then we have to scale it down and do some in-house and some, do the federal inspection of work through a consulting service, and we have to figure out how to perform rest of the inspection services. My hope is the council will approve my 2 positions which I requested this year. One is the inspector and one is the civil engineer. If that is approved, then I think we can work it out and we can just sub out the federal portion, and rest inspection, which is the major portion, can be performed in-house. But if we don't come to an agreement with our consulting firm, then I'll go ahead and move the council to award the construction project and then figure out the inspection and management of the project as a second phase through a separate funding sources. So we are working with the Metro to sign agreements on our MAT projects. So they are drafting an agreement, and they're also drafting an agreement on the MSP projects, with major R projects. So hopefully that should be done this fiscal year. So we should have some kind of an agreement done by this fiscal year, and the council will sign it. And the first quarter of the next fiscal year, we should be ready to start with those projects too. I think.
Okay, very informative. Any questions for Public Works Director, Commissioner Hughes.
Thank you, Shahid. Quick question. I know this was asked a while ago. If I just want to refresh the actual installation of the cabling for the software for the light synchronization and all of that. Is that going within the street or is that going more towards the sidewalk? I can't remember where we're actually installing that, and if there's any other benefit that we need to think about of where that location is, and a la bulb outs and things such as that for FAIRUX.
So that should not interfere. Our preference is we locate another sidewalk. That's generally where the utilities are. We don't want to come and block our lanes. There will be locations where we have a conflict with an existing utility, generally with the high pressure gas lines, we may have to have a small stretch, a portion under the street, but that's fine. It will be a jack and bore. There will be no open cut, but majority of everything will be under the sidewalk. The city has not preserved its right-of-way rights in the past. They're the utility companies, so we gave all the rights to the utility companies. And now if I need to move the utility company to put our infrastructure under the ground, we have to pay them, all them for which will be very expensive. So that's a little dilemma here, but majority, I would say 80 to 90% will be under the sidewalk, and that's the right place for our city-owned utilities.
Is there any advantage to when we look at those sidewalk positions to consider where those might be, if we could minimize the bulb outs in those pinch places where we know, a la on Hope Street near the Pet Delight, or certain places we know we've got really tight situations that people have complained about if we're going to be doing construction on the sidewalks?
Yeah, so we our next phase of the project, we may consider removing some of the bulb outs, once we do a study for next project, because to keep our traffic moving. So once we put our infrastructure on ground, we'll make sure it is not an hindrance or interferes with the next phase of the project, so we don't have to relocate it. So we are mindful. The consultant was aware of that once it was designed, and luckily our second phase of the project is the same consultant who designed the first phase of the project. So I think the coordination went out very well, and if they have done something wrong in the first phase, they'll be responsible because they designed it and know if they have found. So far we did not see any conflict with our second phase, and if we have to realign the bulb outs, which I think will be moving some of the bulb outs, just to move our traffic. So it will not be in our infrastructure will not be in the way.
I just want to make sure that from our residents' viewpoint, that if they see us tearing up the sidewalk near bulb outs and then we replace it, nothing's moved and the bulb out's still there, I think we need to be prepared for that, because a lot of people say, wait a minute, you ripped it out right here and there's still a bulb out here. Why didn't you remove it? So I just think we need to be very cognizant of how things might be perceived and look if you do think that you can't address it in the first phase per se. I just know, because there's been so much consternation regarding the bulb out since they went in. And I just don't want people to think, wait a minute, we're spending money and you're just putting back what was there. So it's just, I know, a very sensitive topic, and I think we need to really monitor that situation.
No, that's a very good point. And this project is not going to touch the bulb outs. The next project will come and touch the bulb outs, which will do all the flat work. This will just a communication and some upgrade, but we'll put the communication in such a way, if we need to remove the bulb outs, they are not in that way. And we are cognizant of the fact. We are also cognizant of the fact we don't want to do a project and then 6 months we have a second project and we try to readjust the flow. It's not a good project management process. So we have taken all those things into consideration. I think so far our program, so the phase is really progressive very well, as they should be in the project. And we will need your help to spread the word out, just to people know, and we will do outreach also. So, and if they have any questions, anything, we'll be very open, transparent, fair. They can walk up, we can show them the plan, we can discuss the plan. So I think the consultant overall has really done a fantastic job, because it was a constrained project. Right away issues were there. working with the metro was an issue, and then we have to coordinate with city of Pasadena and Alhambra also. So everything really took a keen interest, and both the cities, especially Pasadena, was really very upfront, and they were very receptive to our projects, and we give them a hub or a communication link. So subsequently they can dovetail into our system, and Alhambra dovetail into our system. So it will become a one, smooth flowing corridor along the corridor. So because our traffic goes there, their traffic comes to us. So it's a good practice. We should manage as a one corridor, so we should coordinate with them. So.
Thank you, Director Abbas. I believe Councilman Primuth had a question.
Very quick follow-up. Director Abbas, you talked about phase 2 for the possible realignment of the bulb outs. What would be your best guess of the time frame? If we're going to, engage with the public, we might need to give them set their expectation as to time frame for that realignment.
So phase 2 is not going. The phase 1 is the fiber optic communication. Phase 2 is the intelligent transportation system.
No, I understand. Just time frame general.
The phase 3 will come back and realign. So we hope to complete phase 1 after the award in 8 months. And by the time we have finished the 8 months, that will be towards, I would say, summer or August, September of next year. The phase 1 should be completed. And then at that time, we start designing the phase 2. By the time we finish phase 1, the phase 2 would have already been designed. So we start the construction of phase 2 in late year next year. That will take another 9 months for us to construct, because the procurement of the equipment, that will take us to the year 23. So by the end of year 23, we should, as soon as we start the phase 2, we'll be ready to start the study and the design of the phase 3, which will be completed by the end of 2022. So somewhere in the middle of 2023, we will have where we're going to realign and remove the bulb outs and readjust the lane configuration throughout along the corridor and start on the work of the hook or the loop ramp.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Denlap.
Thank you, Chair Abelson. I know Commissioner Fisher, sorry about that. Old habits die hard. Director Abbas, just so I'm clear, can you reconfirm what phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 are?
So phase 1 is just a backbone fiber optic communication vehicle and establishment of a small mini traffic management system in the city hall, right? Okay. And upgrade of some of the controllers, so we don't end splicing of the phase 1. So that is which we can resalvage and use it into the next one. So that's basically is phase 1, providing connection to Pasadena and providing connection to Alhambra and Metro at their Metro transport TMC. Okay. So that's the phase 1 project.
And that's done. That's in partnership with Public Works too, right? Public Works is also working on that project.
Yes. So that's phase 1, which design is ready. We just in the process of awarding. Very soon we want to award the project, so we start the construction. So great. That's relatively a simple project. Phase 2 is the Rogan Fund project, which is basically installing all the hardware and the software related to the ITS infrastructure. We discussed that in detail. So phase 3 will be where we come back and we will study various configuration of the ramp, on off ramp, and all the bottlenecks along the corridor, and try to remove all those bottlenecks by improving the flat work and changing the lane configurations along the corridor, realigning the intersection. The major portion of that project will be the loop ramp, on-off ramp, and plus the intersection of Huntington Drive and Fair Oaks, which is a very weird, free flow intersection. See what configuration has. So that will be phase 3 project.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Director Abbas. Very informative. As we continue to take things a little bit out of order until Chair Abelson arrives, I'm going to go next to the City Council Liaison Communications, then to the Commissioner Communications, and then to the public comment. So I beg your indulgence in this change of order. So now we'll go to the city council liaison communications with Councilman.
Thank you, Chair Fisher. I won't take too much time because I think some of the big ticket items are already pretty well publicized. We have our city manager who's signed on. She's ready to start May 31st. We have a new police chief that was, I think, announced a week and a half ago. We have a couple new ordinances, one on ADUs, and so I think we've got a decent agenda coming up for tomorrow night, and I don't really have anything else. If anyone has any questions about council agenda items, anything related to what I've been doing, please let me know.
All right, thank you. We'll go now to the commissioner communications. I'll just go around clockwise. Start with Commissioner Dunlap. Do you have any communications or comments you'd like to make?
Thank you, Chair Fisher. Yeah, I do have a question. Director Boss, I know that the city of Alhambra has a study. They have a nice website called advancingalhambra.com, where they're looking into, I would say, pretty transformative reconfigurations of the Fremont Avenue ramp to the 10 freeway, as well as Atlantic and Garfield, and looking at closing the 710 stub. And I know that their consultant has been doing outreach for this project. And I'm curious if, has there been any talk or discussion with the city of Alhambra to really kind of understand what the impacts to the city of South Pasadena might be? I mean, preliminarily looking at it, it looks like it is a capacity project that's intended to bring additional cars to those streets. And I'd imagine a lot of those would be coming up through South Pass. So I'll stop there to see if you've been working with the city on it.
No, yes, City of Alhambra has been very proactive. We have a lot of meetings with them. One-on-one meeting, they briefed us. I attended a number of meetings on those things, and with their consultant and their projects. So we are very much familiar with their project. They have also presented our council also about what they want to do. And then they have a separate presentation for city managers and mayor and mayor pro tem. They attended those meetings. So yeah, we are very much involved in the project. We are very much aware on this project. Every time they make a change, they send me a presentation. So I have a link to that. So we are in communication. Yes, they are doing a study. They are very open a study. The city did have some concern about the way the study was done. And we raised those concerns with the city of Alhambra, their consultant also, and with the Caltrans staff also. So, and they promised to look into that, but that's their study. They control it. They have some technical challenges, the program they were using, and they have to overcome those challenges. But yeah, we are in communication, and whatever they do at those three intersections, especially along the Fremont Avenue, that traffic will flow into our Fremont Avenue and come into the city. Just to give you an overall picture of that, their program shows they have a congestion at those three interchange, which they want reconfigure and remove the congestion along those three interchange. So they have a congestion. Once they have a congestion, they have more traffic which comes along Fremont Avenue north-south corridor. Once they reconfigure this intersection and make all the movements of free flow more accessible, remove those bottlenecks, the congestion goes down, the traffic volume suddenly drops. So, for a common perspective, once you have a congestion, you have more traffic coming on. Once you remove the congestion, you improve the capacity, the traffic drops. So that was my biggest concern, and that's what their number present and they showed. And I asked them to explain that. They tried to explain it, but the problem lies with the travel demand software which they are using, which is the county or the metro travel demand software. The travel demand software does not have all the transportation network coded into the system. So if you don't have all the network coded into the system, the traffic follows the existing route or go whatever the traffic system is going. So we asked them to please go, and the consultant did acknowledge that it does not have those, and it has its own shortcomings. And we asked them if they can code additional network as least north-south corridor, so traffic is not pushed out of the area, which basically are within the area. So they can show that. So they said they'll look into that and they'll get back to us. So we are working with them, so hopefully we'll reach to, and they'll heed to our concerns, And they're open. If a point something is not, they tested it, they acknowledged it, and they want to work with us on this.
Thank you. That's good to hear that sort of communication is there. I think especially if it's a capacity project that is increasing cars on Fremont, then you're like all that's coming through South Pass. And I know we have very limited capacity, and we probably don't want a lot of that capacity to come up this way. So yeah, I think it's important that we continue to like stay involved with that.
And that concern was also raised with the assistant city manager by our city manager. I was present in the meeting, and the mayor was present in the meeting, and they were very open and receptive to the idea, and they promised they'll look into that.
Thank you, Commissioner Dunlap. Commissioner Liu, did you have any comments or communications?
Thank you, Vice Chair Fisher. I don't have any communications for this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next we'll go to Commissioner Hughes. Do you have any?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Just a quick adjunct to what we were just talking about. Does Fremont, when they think about Fremont with Alhambra, and I know we talked about our informational signage that would go up and alert people that between Fremont and then hopefully getting them over to Fair Oaks, is the thought that Alhambra would also coordinate or going even into Pasadena with a similar signage? Because I know Pasadena has some, but whether the whole corridor would have a continuous information coordination so that people, again, could be encouraged if they're coming up Fremont, again, whatever happens with the 710 stub, but they get information coming up Fremont as they're in Alhambra, they come up and they start hitting South Pasadena, Fremont, and they get information, hopefully directing them over to Fair Oaks up and then into Pasadena and get information there. A lot of it might be if they're trying to get to the 210. So I just didn't know if that conversation's taking place at all regarding the cities working together on that component.
So they reviewed our plan. I would like to share my plans with everybody. So it's better to get input from all of them. Something we have missed because they have expertise, they are good engineers. So we have shared our plans with both cities. We have shared our plan with Caltrans. I wanted to seek their input also, and Metro also. So they were very closely involved in that. And they know we have a program of travel information passing to our motorists. Both the cities, especially Alhambra, has no program to give that information to their drivers, at this point in time. City of Pasadena has a program where they install their own trailblazer signs, and I have a conversation with their department, and they want to work with us, and that's why they want to get the same information, so same protocol which we are going to use. We have shared with them and make sure we can, write on to each other protocol, so that they have that information whenever they have a project, they will be able to consider and see if that works. So here, keep in mind, there's a catch-22. If Alhambra get this information and they start passing this information to their driver, their travel time information may be absolutely different than what we are trying to do. So because their travel time will stretch all over the corridor from one point to another point of the thing. And the driver may get a message, oh, if I take this information, and they may show a longer time on Fair Oaks than what we are showing here. So that can be, conflict, and driver may start losing a confidence what we are trying to do, and they just see the first sign and they just continue onto the Fremont Avenue. So I am reluctant to give the information to both the cities, especially I am okay with Pasadena because Pasadena has the same goals and objective for Pasadena Avenue, which is Fremont gets into Pasadena as we have. So I'm okay to share all my information with them because we align. but not with Alhambra. So they also have information on Fremont Avenue, and they start displaying it to the Fremont Avenue. We had a discussion, and they have not really shown interest in that information too at this point. So we are trying it best. They know our goals and objectives, and they know very much what we want to achieve. We don't want traffic on Fremont or any of other streets, and we want to keep them on Fair Oaks. But they have our information. If they decide that to do in the future, they will have everything available to us. Because we are giving that whole information to Metro in their TMC, Traffic Management Center, which is Alhambra. So they can take that information and distribute the way they like to. And in turn, I want their information. So I also know what is happening on their corridor. So they are going to share that information with us.
Thank
That's
you.
helpful. Thank you.
So I don't have any individual communications for myself, although I and Commissioner Abelson will be having comments on items 6 and 7 on the agenda. So just to recap where we've been on the agenda, we've handled item number 3, item number 12, item number 10, and item number 11. And with that, our next item will be the public comments, which was number 1 on the agenda. And that was the 5th item we're handling. So let's go to the public comments.
All right. So for our public comment, it's the 250 word limit. So I will read up to 250 words. So the first public comment, and the only public comment that I have for item number 1, is from the Bissell House. My name is Will Hoyman, and I own the Bissell House Bed and Breakfast at the corner of Orange Grove and Columbia. This landmark historic property has been a cherished business in the city for over 26 years and was built the year before South Pasadena was born as a city. We have been providing a first glimpse of our beautiful community for all of these years, hosting scores of visiting guests, many of whom have never been to our area. And we also are grateful to provide an escape for local residents or extra rooms for their visiting family and friends as needed. In recent years, we have noticed an unfortunate increase in the volume, noise, and speed of vehicles passing through the city, most of whom are not stakeholders in our community. At times, it has rendered this important intersection unsafe to both other drivers and to pedestrians. Most tragically, individuals were struck by a vehicle and their dog killed in recent years. The introduction of the 2-into-1 merging lanes on the southbound side of Orange Grove has provided an unintended incentive for many drivers to attempt to race from the stoplight in order to gain the first position in front of the neighboring vehicles. This has added immensely to the noise population as a result. That's all that I have, Vice Chair Fisher, for public comment.
Okay, thank you. And I see that our chair has arrived. Commissioner Abelson, we've just completed items, well, the public comment, item number 3, the minutes, the city council liaison communications, the commissioner communications, and staff liaison communications. Your timing is impeccable.
I planned it perfectly.
Yes, but we have to ask, did your daughter's team win the game?
I am pleased to announce that the South Pasadena High School Tigers won. In regulation, they won 3-1. They beat Sage High School, the school in Orange County, and they are now advancing to the CIF Southern Section semifinals. So very exciting. And while I have the floor, I just want to thank Vice Chair Fisher, Garrett, and Leona and the rest of our commission and Councilmember Primuth for your indulgence and understanding. And I felt very bad about being late and missing the first 30 minutes, but I felt I had to be there for my daughter. So anyway, thank you very much, and let's proceed. Thank you.
And we're glad you got to see her game and got to see the team.
Thank you.
So that puts us on Agenda item number 4. Proposed stop sign on Meridian Avenue at Oak Street.
Yeah, so I can give a brief report to the commission on this one. So just a quick recap. The initial study was done by W.Z. Zimmerman in May of 2020, and the Zimmerman concluded that the stop signs are not warranted. Then subsequently, we retained Intervas Consulting Group to do a peer review, and they concurred with the recommendations or the finding of the original study. And then recently, about 2 months ago, we consulted with Rock, Miller and Associates, which a report was presented to the commission. At the last meeting, the commission has a couple of observations on the report. So directed the staff to go back and seek clarification from the Miller report. So I had an extensive discussion with Rock Miller on the report, and I tried to seek the clarifications, but he was unable to provide any clarification which the commission asked, not on a single point. He doesn't have any recollection of any notes taken, and he agrees. He generally concurred with the findings or the observations of the commission, and he said he doesn't have time to perform any further studies and analysis. I did point out the anomalies in the report or the conflicting statements which was made in the report, like rightly pointed residential street of 2 equal design characteristics and the volume, and draw his attention that how did he reach to the conclusion. He did not answer that question, and he said that he said you need to hire further studies. You need to hire a consultant who can come back and do the job, and he doesn't have a time to do that kind of work. He was nice. He was open and upfront with me what he has collected, what is not, and how he performed the study. But he did agree from those observations, which we have, like he didn't measure the site distance, he didn't measure the gap, he didn't observe the gap, but he didn't even make any. Once I asked him a question that you have special condition exists to the east, what do you mean by that? He did not address that question. He said, basically he was trying to help the city to get to a resolution. But his recommendation was, he basically said for a residential street like LA has a policy, you should also have a policy for the residential street. And I also draw his attention that we can have a policy for the residential street, but here we have a collector street. So he did not probably realize that, so he did not address that question also. How can he clarify residential and the collector street? So that's where we are back. So that being said, I would also like to give another suggestion or other alternate to stop signs. We still have an option open at this point. If the commission recommends installation of a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, we can do it quickly. And why I'm saying so, because I have a contract in place using the federal dollars where we're designing 3 rectangular rapid flashing beacon. That design is almost done. I have some spare federal money available with me, which I saved out of that contract. I have not closed the contract. I can use, if I'm given that direction, I can use that fund and save some city $1 to go and design the rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which can be done relatively quickly under the existing contract. It would require no additional funding for the design, and we can complete it. And the council, I believe, has already approved last year installation of a rectangular rapid flashing beacon at that site. So we don't need further recommendations from approval from the council. So we can just have to inform the council that that's the direction we want to go, and we'll just proceed with them. And it will be a situation where we can build all the 4, including 3-1 and this 4th one as a one package, and we can get this project completed quickly, and we can get some good bids back for this. But we do have to find the fundings for this new 4th rapid rectangular flashing beacon at Oak Street. which I believe staff will make appropriate recommendations to the council for the readjustment of our fund allocation. And we may have some saving from Prop C and Prop C from other funding, which we'll also look into that, and we can utilize those funding and complete that project. So that concludes my report. I'll be more than happy to answer questions if there are any.
Okay, Larry, you're muted. Or frozen.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay. Are you asking me if I have questions?
Well, you're chair now.
Oh, okay.
So,
I thought you were going to do this for the entire meeting, but all right.
I'm sorry. I'd be glad to.
Okay. Whatever you're comfortable with, Mr. Vice Chair, I'll be happy to take over or defer.
You're here. I'll let you take
Okay.
over. Sorry for the
Oh,
misunderstanding.
no, we're good. We're good. Great. All right. Well, thank you, Shahid, for the update.
Uh-oh, is he frozen?
Frozen.
Shahid, can I just ask clarification?
I think at this point has.
Shahid, you were suggesting the beacons at the Oak and Meridian location?
Yes, so
That's just one, or you were saying 4, but the other 3 are planned elsewhere? You're
yeah,
not
the other
talking
three-
Maple or Pine?
No, we just talking one at Oak, other 3 are planned on 2 on Mission Street and 1 on Fremont Avenue. So those are already under federal funding. Those are already planned.
So this would be in lieu of a stop sign there?
Yes,
Correct.
in lieu of stop sign, if that's the direction we get from the commission to do.
Shahid, with rectangular rapid flashing beacons,
Yeah.
and I'm saying this partly if the others don't know, they're always installed in pairs, one on the right side, one on the left side
Right.
of the crosswalk. There's also a provision to put in an advance one to say it would go with the pedestrian crossing sign ahead, but there would be an advance RRFB that you can put in if the sight distance is limited. There may be adequate sight distance, but not abundant sight distance for the southbound approach. Would it be your intention to put in an advance RRFB to warn drivers in advance that there's an active pedestrian crossing?
Yes, I think that was commission make a recommendation last time, which we have a meeting, so we'll put a advanced flashing beacon, which will be a basic advanced warning flashing beacon, which is as per the MUTCD. So our intention was to put that in advance. If somebody is not paying attention and they think that sight distance is too tight, that will really be a great warning and help to the approaching mode. And the greatest thing is flashing beacon, as most of you know, is only flash when there's a demand. And once there's a demand, the driver pays attention. FHWA has done studies recently, and it's on their FHWA website. Anybody can look out. They have found that the driver yield compliance with the rectangular rapid flashing beacon was 86%, as compared to 40 or 46% with the stop signs. So it's a great alternate, and with advanced warning sign as suggested, I think it should meet the purpose or the intent what we want to do on Meridian Avenue.
So I'm back. Better than ever. I was on the wrong network, so I apologize for that. Everybody can see me and hear me?
Yes.
Great. So that should be enough for the glitches for one night. So thank you. So Kim asked a question. Sorry, Commissioner Hughes and Commissioner Fisher asked a question. It sounds like Commissioners Dunlap or Lou, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Thank you, Chair Abelson. Director Abbas, in addition, I noticed within the last month, you guys put down bot dots in the bulb out, well, not really a bulb out, the shoulder, the new shoulder on the west side for the southbound direction on Meridian. Is there any, do you guys have any plans or intent to do more traffic calming improvements of those sorts closer towards the intersection? So I know in last month's meeting, we discussed maybe squaring up the receiving lane at Oak, so that way northbound rights can't turn right as quickly, possibly with the use of, paint or bot dots or things like that, or, some sort of lane narrowing. Is there anything like that we would consider in addition to the RRFBs?
Yeah, that's easy fix. I think that's a good point, excellent point. I not thought that way, but it's good to have traffic engineer. So we will definitely do that. And that, just to say, commission, that work was done in-house by the staff. And I think they've done really an excellent work. Normally the city will contract that out, but our staff chose to do it themselves rather than paying a huge amount to the contract. Yeah, we can definitely, we'll look into that. I think that's an excellent good point. We should realign and make those lane configuration as straight as possible. And that relatively very simple and easy in-house fix.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Dunlap, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair Abelson. Director Boss, I'll probably dogpile on what Commissioner Liu said. Yeah, a lot of jurisdictions are doing the quick build improvements with the not more temporary materials, because sometimes they're there for a while. I wondered if we have the open streets grant that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Maybe could some of that funding, would it be appropriate to utilize a portion of that for those improvements, for the quick build improvements at that intersection? I see a lot of jurisdictions, especially installing like art or placemaking type elements in the curb extension portion. So not always like the crosswalk, but in the portion out from the curb, sometimes it can give a nice visual cue to slow down and also make it a little quirky.
So I'm not really 100% sure about the guidelines of the grant. I think those are meant for the residential street. That's what my understanding. It may not be applicable to a collective street, but if they can spare them some money, that will be great. And some of the crosswalks don't meet the standards. We need to fix them. I think those are something which we should meet them and make them compatible as soon as possible. So ramps, those that will help, and especially those crosswalks at these locations are a little more expensive because of the site challenges here. But we can definitely, make use of the funding. If I can ask Margaret, and what is the intent, whether they can use it in a collector street or no. So we can check on that.
Commissioner Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had talked at our last meeting regarding those other locations, the Pine and Maple, regarding extensions of the red curbing. Is that also something, again, going forward, that will be part of the plan?
Yes, we look into that. I think we will look into, we will extend the curve. I think that's the very right observation. We should extend that at least minimum 2 more car lanes, 50 to 75 feet, more side distance here. And that's again a very easy fix. We did something as a part of our last improvement because the commission recommended us. So that may not be sufficient. So we will add more to that. We can do it.
And then as part of that, the plan would be to make sure that we let all of those residents in the vicinity know of the plans.
Yes, we let them know that we're going. We'll send.
Thank you, guys. Garrett's going. Yes.
we let them know. And just to let you know, I think Garrett received a very nice email from Delane inquiring about and thanking the department the improvement which we have done. And in the email, she also inquired if the stop sign is not installed, will you still be considering for the rectangular rapid flashing beacon? And Garrett said, yes, absolutely. That's on the books, we'll do it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you. You should probably call on yourself because we've all spoken once, but
No,
I was
just a reminder, just sorry to interrupt. We're just at this point asking questions of staff, right? I just wanted to be clear.
yes.
Go ahead, sorry.
So as we've noted, your staff has put in the edge line with the raised ceramic markers to provide a rumble effect should drivers drift off course, which is good. And I think that's something that the commission had recommended several months ago. So I'm pleased to see that. In the WGZE Zimmerman report, I believe that report also recommended the posting of curve warning signs with advisory speeds along the several curves along Meridian Avenue. Do you plan to install those curve warning?
I think those have been done. I look into that. Those are part of our original improvements. I think those have been done. If not, we can install it. That's very easy fixed. I think those have been done.
Oh, thank
So
you.
if not, we'll take another look also and we will install. But I believe those were part of our original improvement, which we agreed as a part of, commission and staff work with. And I get it. Have you marked the center lane or that's still pending for waiting for a contract? We still have to mark the center yellow lane just to keep the traffic into the lane. Have you done
It's
that?
not complete yet. We ordered the paint and a stencil so staff can do it in-house. We should have that completed by the end of this month.
So that's improvement still coming on.
Right. And as far as I know from the short-term mitigation efforts that we've worked out with Smart Families, that's the last one to be completed. And unless we're going to install those curve warning signs, which I made a note to look into it.
Commissioner Liu.
You're muted.
I remembered to lower my hand. I forgot to unmute. Thank you, Chair Abelson. I know it's a secondary question, and I just realized I forgot to ask it. I was also wondering if in-house you guys have considered alternatives to the always stop, such as other maybe more invasive in intersection traffic calming or traffic control measures like traffic circles or things of the type like that to really slow down speeds in the intersection if we do not meet the warrants for a stop sign.
So yeah, we consider extensive traffic calming measures as a part of a complete street project, which were presented to the commission, to the council, and to the community. So I can send you a presentation which talks about the chokers, which talk about the raised curve, which talk about the flat raised intersections, bulb outs, whole lot of traffic calming facility depending upon what kind, and talk about the traffic circles, roundabouts. So depending upon what are the site conditions, so everything is on the table. We'll consider every possible option, and that's what we are going to do as part of our Fremont complete street project. All those options were presented to the community. They were very excited, most of them, and they will consider with the community input, we will consider all those possible options. It will be difficult to achieve consensus, but we will go to the community, we present every option, seek their input, and then see what the majority wants on Fremont. So those all elements will be part of that. And if we do a project on Meridian, so all those elements will be a part of Meridian. It's just kind of like a boilerplate for us to move forward with any complete street project. It's like a toolbox, so which will act for us for our future projects.
All right, thank you. That's great.
Okay, so picking up on Commissioner Fisher's cue, I have a lot to say, but in terms of questions for staff, I just have one question. I just want to confirm that the data that we have in terms of vehicle counts, but pedestrian counts at that intersection. The most current information would be the information that's included with the Zimmerman report. Is that
Yes.
accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So then, unless there are any more questions of staff, I wanted to ask Leona if there is any public comment, and I am aware, both because there's a hand raise and I was texted that a member of the public, Alan Ehrlich, who is on the call here, would like to make a live public comment, which is perfectly fine with me as long as it's consistent with the parameters that are being used for the city council. But I wanted to check with staff and see if there were any other public comment and if that's okay.
So we can't take live public comment because it says so on the agenda. So I would assume, since tomorrow night's council meeting is live, where live public participation can happen, that we'll also be able to do that. We have a couple of technical things, and the actual language on the agenda has to be amended before we can do that. So if Alan needs to email anyone, myself, the question that he wants to ask live, I can address that after the meeting during the week. But with that said, we can read our public comments that were pre-submitted.
Okay, and I would ask if, and I don't know if he has, but if there's a written comment from Mr. Ehrlich, I'd appreciate you reading that too. I don't know if there is.
There is one. I think he sent an email. There's attachment to the email. So
Okay.
I don't have any public comment for this particular item that was submitted during the deadline time frame. So I don't have any for item number 4.
Okay, do you have any submitted after the time frame set forth in the agenda?
Not at this time. Let me check. I have my emails closed. Let me check really quickly.
yeah, you received at 5:45 p.m. today.
Okay,
So the deadline for submitting public comment is at 12 o'clock today. So I guess it's totally up to you, for the commission, if you want to hear his public comment or not.
yeah, I'm happy to hear it. I mean, it sounds like that's the only one anyway. So I don't have any problem. Do any of the members of the commission have any problem listening? I mean, I would just ask that, whatever the word or time limit is, we apply that. But other than that, I'd like to hear it. Is that all right with everybody else?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Give me 1 second.
Thanks, Leona.
No problem. So it says, Commissioners, I respectfully disagree with the Zimmerman traffic analysis and recommendation to not install any stop signs on Meridian Avenue at the intersection with Maple Street. The traffic study represented in Table 5, page 40, is flawed and undercounts actual vehicle counts for all day parts. The study was conducted at a time that South Pasadena schools, in particular the high school and middle school, were closed due to COVID. Even now, the schools are only partially open with fewer than 25% of students on campus on any given day. If the study had been done correctly under normal circumstances, it would have found that with the increased vehicle, bicycle, and pedestrian traffic to Arroyo Vista and Monterey Hills elementary schools, in addition to South Pass Monterey Hills, I believe, or SPMS and South Pass High School, this intersection would have exceeded the conditions warning the installation of stop signs and improving, not removing, the crosswalk. The report is also flawed in that it did not consider traffic conditions at the intersection of Meridian Avenue and Beach Street. This is a T intersection. Beach intersections Meridian near the midpoint of an S curve. Looking south from Beach, driver visibility is not great, but acceptable. Looking north from Beach, visibility to make a left turn is poor, with trees, a telephone junction box, and the curve all interfering with safe road conditions. Extending red curb markings at this intersections will do nothing to improve visibility. If Public Works did not ask the consultant to analyze this intersection, that was an oversight. The failure is on Public Works, not the consultant. And that's all the public comment that I have.
Okay, great. Thank you, Leona. Okay, so we can take this in any order. Usually I speak last. If it's all right with everybody, I'm just going to throw out some initial excuse me, some initial thoughts and information, and then we can see how where the discussion leads us. So my recollection of where we left this last month was that there was, at least for some of us, support for the always stop, but that we were desirous of additional information to buttress that conclusion and move forward, whether it's for presidential reasons or other reasons. And so we asked a number of questions, and Shahid obtained the information that he could obtain. Commissioner Fisher and I went out this morning and took a look at the intersection. We've looked at it previously. I think many of you, if not all of us, have done that at one point or another. And so the direction I'm headed is that I'm supportive of the always stop. I was supportive of it before, but I was concerned about the depth of the analysis in the Miller report, and was hoping maybe there could be some more. But the concerns I have with the intersection are the following. One, it is close to a number of schools, and it is clearly a route used for kids to go to and from school. Looking at the pedestrian counts attached to the Zimmerman report, it's interesting. There are 111 pedestrian crossings the afternoon that the counts were taken. And that's over a 4-hour period, but that's pretty impressive. The AN number was smaller. I think it was around 50. But that's a pretty impressive number of crossings for a short period of time, which shows that this is an oft used crosswalk. So that's the first thing. The second is the volume of traffic on Meridian. Again, looking at the Zimmerman, the data, the total volume over 24 hours northbound and southbound is over 9,600 vehicles. That's also pretty impressive. Next, we have the intersection. So by all accounts, and everybody may have a different view of how many seconds it takes, but it's very clear that for those traveling westbound on Oak who want to turn left, the sight distance for the cars traveling southbound on Meridian coming around that curve is not terrific. It's dangerous. It's tight. Commissioner Fisher and I were there this morning. Of course, that the very moment when it was happening, he was looking away, but I was watching, and everybody was traveling around the right speed. You know, the car traveling southbound on Meridian was 25 to 30 miles an hour. The driver on Oak had stopped at the intersection to turn left, and it was clear, and then started coming out, and then around the curve came that car going maybe 28, and they came really close. And that was just one instance. But to me, the sight distance for that turn is a real concern. And another interesting thing I noticed pre-game this afternoon is that for those traveling westbound on Oak who want to turn right, that intersection is, I think Commissioner Fisher used the term skewed. It pulls the cars out to a point. So those turning right have to go this way and then back in to turn right to go northbound. And as they're making that right turn, they come perilously close to the drivers coming south. And if it's a bigger pickup truck, I saw them have to cross over the double yellow on Meridian to make the right turn from westbound Oak to northbound Meridian. So for me, proximity to the schools, the irregular design of the intersection, the skewed angles, the sight distance concerns, I think there's more than sufficient justification for an always stop. And I appreciate Commissioner Fisher had Leona send us the MUTCD standards. And if you look towards the bottom of the first page and onto the second page, it talks about the need to control vehicle pedestrian conflicts near locations that generate high pedestrian volumes. I don't think there's any question it generates a high pedestrian volume. We tried to see it this morning, but because of the unusual school schedule, We didn't see a boatload of crossings in the 45 minutes we were there. But the data provided by Zimmerman tells a story that's consistent with what the neighbors have been telling us. The other criteria talked about locations where after stopping, you can't see conflicting traffic. You're not able to negotiate the intersection without the other traffic stopping. Yes, it's certainly possible. Is it safe? Not so much. And then we go to the various factors. It talks about combined vehicle, bicycle, pedestrian volume being more than 2,000 units a day. It far surpasses that. Again, ability to see conflicting traffic isn't sufficient. And then it says or then it talks about crash records. I don't think we have supporting crash records, so that would not apply. But so to me, I was hoping that Mr. Miller would come back with some additional analysis and to beef up the conclusions that he provided. But I think the conclusions he provided, at least for this intersection, are supportable by the data that was provided in the Zimmerman report. And I'm going to be quiet in a second. The last thing I want to point out is we've heard from the residents that we should be applying the same or similar criteria to those applied, excuse me, to other intersections, including Oak at Milan, which is near the middle school, and Marengo. And I was struggling to find that traffic study because that was a study that we had reviewed in the prior Public Works Commission. Miraculously, this afternoon, I found it in a box and I took a look at it. And what was interesting is that the basis for the warranting a stop sign there, it was high pedestrian crossings, which was 95 within an hour and a half period. We're at 111 in a 4-hour period. Excuse me. And the number of vehicles that went through the intersection in a 24-hour period, and the number of vehicles going through that intersection in a 24-hour period was 3762, which is what, 3,000 vehicles less than the number of vehicles traveling north-south alone, traveling through Meridian and Oak. So if we justified it there, it would seem to be anomalous to not justify it here, and to apply similar criteria. So based on all of that, I think the stop sign makes sense. I think it's warranted. I think it's justified. And I would suggest that we proceed with it. So those are my initial thoughts. I will now be quiet. Who else would like to chime in with their comments, thoughts, disagreements? All right, I see, oh, their hands are flying up. How about Commissioner Liu and then Commissioner Fisher, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair Abelson. I think I'll make it quick and I'll reiterate kind of the MUTCD clarifications that Commissioner Fisher shared with the other commissioners from the MUTCD. I do want to kind of clarify the volume justification because actually that has me more worried about the applicability of a stop sign at this location. I would want to highlight the fact that the volumes, while we're seeing 9,000 or so cars going north-south, which is definitely much higher than a residential street. This is definitely collector level volume, is not comparable or relatively the same as the traffic coming onto and off of Oak. And the reason I'm concerned about that, not just because we're not going to need warrants, but I'm more worried about the fact that is it safe to put a crossing across let's say we do put a stop sign across Meridian, where the cars going north-south outnumber the cars that are coming off the side street 5-1. And are we going to realistically say that we expect, during the busiest times of day, so I'm looking at the same traffic counts that you are, 554 cars going southbound in the PM peak, That's just 1 hour. So, that's a car every 6 seconds versus 400 going northbound. Are we expecting them to stop during the PM rush hour, every one of them at the stop sign? My concern is not that a stop sign isn't warranted. I'm more concerned is, regardless if it's warranted or not, if we look at these volumes, we have to think about if this stop sign would be obeyed, because there's nothing, the only thing worse than I would say an unsafe condition is that it could actually be less safe if we put a stop sign that is not obeyed the majority of the time. So if cars going north-south during morning and afternoon rush hour are not seeing side street volumes, like they're not seeing a westbound left turning vehicle, are they going to roll that stop sign? Are they going to quickly, stop for maybe quarter of a second while the pedestrian in the corner is assuming that the car is going to stop for them? These are my concerns, and that's why I was really also hoping that Mr. Miller would provide more clarification on the sight distance issue, which unfortunately he was unable to do. So I guess I'm in the same boat, but I just want to, I'm reaching a slightly different conclusion because we did not get that additional clarification on sight distance issues that we were hoping to get to the bottom of last month. That's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Fisher.
Yes, I would like to just offer a perspective. First of all, I haven't come to a conclusion one way or the other whether the council should approve always stop control. And the reason why is, in all the studies I've done during my career, I certainly look at the numbers. I certainly look at the study, but I don't go only by the numbers. There's things that you can see on site that give you intuition and give you additional perspective on it. Unfortunately, by the way, according to the Zimmerman report, it says the count was conducted on January the 20th of 2020, or January 22nd, I think, of 2020 on a Wednesday. That was pre-pandemic, pretty much, but maybe it was a bad school day because of schedules. Others know more about that than I do. But unfortunately, when Commissioner Abelson and I were able to look at it this morning, it wasn't normal conditions. The school has a irregular schedule. Many of the students are staying home. Some are starting late. It wasn't a usual day that we could observe. We counted 4 adults crossing and 3 students crossing during the half-hour period from roughly 8 o'clock to 8:30. I do wish that we could have looked at it when there's the regular traffic there pre-pandemic. And by the way, according to page 54, it indicates that during the morning peak hour, there were 22 pedestrians crossing Meridian Avenue. I'm not sure where the figure 50 came from, or maybe I misunderstood, but it shows that there were 22, along with 1,086 vehicles on Meridian Avenue. When you look at the number of vehicles and pedestrians crossing Meridian from Oak, you get 136 compared with 1,086 on Meridian. That's a ratio of 89% on Meridian to 11% on Oak. According to the MUTCD, the volume should be approximately equal, or at least 200 an hour for each of 8 hours on the minor street. Unfortunately, it doesn't come close to that. But again, I would not go just by the numbers. We've heard concerns from the community that traffic is speeding, although stop signs are not put in as a speed management device. We heard that there are near misses. We heard there are accidents. We heard they are not yielding to students. And we also heard that there's inadequate sight distance. Unfortunately, no one has collected data to confirm that or to confirm that it's untrue. We hear that there is inadequate sight distance, but it was not measured. We hear that that cars aren't yielding to pedestrians, but we are unable to observe it now because we do not have normal conditions there. So I'm a little bit troubled in that the numbers don't show that an always stop is justified, but if we observe conditions there that would suggest drivers aren't yielding to students, et cetera, I would not hesitate to support always stop. One final comment. I think Commissioner Abelson referred to the Oak Milan situation where always stop control was put there. I believe the PED volume, student volume, was much higher. And I believe that there was a little bit more of a balance of traffic on Milan versus Oak. The desire is to have it almost equal or 60-40. I think there it was something in the range of 35, 65, 30, 38, 62, something in that range, a lot closer than the 89-11 that we see here. That's my recollection. If my recollection is faulty, then I will stand corrected on that. So I am troubled that I can't observe something to say, yes, I support a stop sign, even though the numbers don't bear it out. So I cannot recommend to the council that always stop be put in at this point in time. I also am concerned that Mr. Miller did not prepare an engineering study that answered the questions that we had, which might lead us to a consensus on this issue. So that's where I stand. I can't support it as of now, but I'm not saying that I couldn't support it if we could observe normal conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Next up, we have Commissioner Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question for the transportation experts. Would it make sense to, if the concern is that people might be running a stop sign, should we put the all stop in, the all four-way stop in? Would we be able to adjunct that with the beacon so that if students again are crossing, they would give more safety for the students and pedestrians crossing? So it's a hybrid, at least one of the directions where we think that the traffic, obviously, and the pedestrian traffic is most for the students and pedestrians. Would that be an option that might solve some of our issues, to do a hybrid of that?
Sorry, can you explain what do you mean by hybrid?
Meaning that we would have a four-way stop, but we would also add a flashing beacon. So when the pedestrians are stopping at the pathway that with the most traffic, that would give that protection or alerting to the vehicles, even though they're going to stop, that there is a stop there and pedestrians are going to be crossing.
Are you saying an RFB and a stop sign both together?
Correct. Yes.
We cannot do that we cannot install RFB at a control approach. Neither is yield sign, neither with the stop sign. The approach has to be uncontrolled, no traffic control devices. So we cannot do that.
So you can't do that. But the option would be either the four-way stop or the beacon. Is that, am I understanding those the options, or we do nothing?
So the option is, rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is for the main street, and the side
Right.
street already have a stop sign, installed on them.
Okay.
I think do nothing is not an option. Staff would recommend at this time. So we have other alternatives available. So staff is not recommending do nothing an option at this time.
So the options really we have are the four-way stop sign or the flashing beacon. And then in addition to that, we have the consideration for the curbing.
Yes, you have a rectangular flashing beacon at the intersection, supplement with advanced warning flashing beacon, and doing some improvement at the intersection, realigning the lanes to make them more normal, more aligned to the main street.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Liu.
Thank you, Chair Abelson. I just want to clarify last point. that Director Abbas brought up. The RRFB would be treated similar to the in-road lights, so and vice versa. So if we do go with an always stop, the in-road lights would have to be deactivated and removed. So we would have no actuated lighting at this intersection.
Commissioner Dunlap.
Thank you. Director Boss, as far as, at our last commission meeting, we talked about approaching Rockmiller for additional information to support our findings on the multi-way stop at this location. Is that something that we've just kind of, because it seems like he doesn't have the capacity right now to provide that data? Is that something that, are we going to get this question answered? Would we engage another consultant, or would we do we make a decision with the information we have now?
The council in the previous has approved do a study when everything comes normal, a full-blown study. So we have an option to wait when everything comes back and do a full-blown study. We may get a different results, we may not get a different result. Keep in mind, the two consultants, both are equally qualified. They did a peer review of the study and they concurred with the finding. So we do another study, which will be expensive study, and then end up with the same recommendation. In the meantime, we don't not install a flashing beacon and we lose the funding opportunities which we have no. So that's already been said, and the council already shown the desire to do that. If that's the recommendation commission is making, so the staff will be more than happy to pursue fourth consultant on this one to do a full-blown study on this. If you look at the number of, I think the concern about the number of the pedestrian crossing, and the peak hour crossing at that location was 46, and 46 pedestrian cross the whole intersection. If the one which cross the main street, Meridian, are much less. This also includes the pedestrian which walk along the Meridian Avenue in a peak hour. So they coordinated with the school, make sure the school is in full session before the consultant went out to collect the number, and the staff also coordinated with the school to make sure the school is fully in operation, and they collected the volume both during the school in and out session and rest of the day. And incidentally, the volume which is shown on the report during the school off period, the volume was less and the volume was higher on the fringes of that period.
Okay. Yeah, and I think I made a number of comments at our last commission meeting, and I won't make everyone sit through them again. I think when I experience the intersection as a person driving or as a person walking, definitely I want additional safety enhancements. I agree with Chair Abelson mentioned when you turn left from Oak to Meridian, it's tough to turn. It's a skewed intersection. I'm able-bodied, and it takes me a while, and to turn to looking south, it's difficult to find a gap. I mentioned at our last meeting, there wasn't any speed data collected, right? Like we don't know how fast people are going on Meridian. I didn't see that, like the 85th percentile speed. It's tough to really know to make that justification. I would want the city to have, a robust engineering report to really back up this recommendation. I think it's an important recommendation. It's one that I think it meets my experiential warrant. And yeah, I guess the issue I have sometimes is when we talk about the split between Meridian and Oak Street, and that it's such a high split on Meridian. I don't think any of us, if we had our druthers and we designed Meridian, we would never design it to carry that many vehicles. Like it should never have that many cars. And it just seems like, I don't know, like in some ways, are we resigned to that? When population increases 10%, 20%, and ever in how many number of years, you know, is it going to be 11,000 vehicles on Meridian or 12,000? And not to get too dire with it, but yeah, I recall like at a past commission meeting, I think a resident asked about speed humps or some sort of vertical speed reducers, and you know, the city said that it's not a street that we would install speed humps or and okay, you know, I certainly understand emergency response times, but at the same time, I mean, I guess this commission did propose some things that the city has taken action on, implementing like the bots, dots, and that sort of thing. But I feel like we're running out of options in some ways. I think the RFB is a good step, and as far as if we can do something, I'm certainly supportive of that. I would like to support a stop sign again, like Commissioner Fisher. I wish we had that additional information to really justify it by a complete engineering study. I think it meets my experiential warrant, but it might not meet the letter of the law with the MUTCD. It doesn't.
So if I make a point, if you look at the operational point of view for Meridian, it is really acting as a true collector street. If you look at the overall setting and the traffic number, because we don't have very many north-south collector streets, very few in the city. If you look at the data of last couple of years, this street really worked in unison with what happens the streets which is further on the east. If the number goes down there, the number goes up here. If that number goes down, the number goes up. That's actually the data which I saw in last few years. I saw that. Is it a robust data? I can't say, because this is what the data we have. So I found out, you know, that's how the balance trips on both the street.
Yeah, I would just add, I guess I don't operate under the assumption that if we improve Fair Oaks, people are going to shift from Meridian all the way over to Fair Oaks. I used to live in the San Fernando Valley, and I worked in Alhambra, and I was on Meridian every single day. You know, it was the quickest way to get to the San Fernando Valley from Alhambra. I wouldn't go up Fremont, I wouldn't go up Fair Oaks, and it was, in some ways, those streets were out of the way, and yeah, that street definitely carries a lot of cut through traffic, and so anything that we can do to really reduce the volume on that street, or to make people drive slow, to make it uncomfortable to drive fast, I would be supportive of.
Thank you, Commissioner Dunlap. Does anybody else? I have some additional things to say, but I wanted to see if anybody else had anything they wanted to. Commissioner Hughes.
Just to ask Commissioner Fisher and Dunlap and Lou, with your expertise in transportation, what is your thoughts regarding the flashing beacon option, which we hadn't even talked about at the last meeting, as something that could be applicable for this intersection?
Do we want to let the two young members go first?
Sure. I think Director Boss pointed out some good data on their effectiveness, especially in getting drivers to yield to people crossing the street. It's something that I'm actively implementing every day in my work, and so they are effective. You know, so it's I would say they're effective. Of course, there are different opinions on them, you know, and the designs can vary, and so we want to make sure that whatever went out there is kind of matches the aesthetics of the community. You know, I have heard some concerns around that, but for the most part, what you're really talking about, you're talking about the existing sign, and then there's just this horizontal panel. And what's really effective is like the pattern that the lights flash. It's a unique pattern. It gets your attention. It's really effective for drivers to recognize that there's a crosswalk there. And we see them all over the San Gabriel Valley. I think the city of San Marino recently installed some with in-roadway warning lights across Huntington Drive. So that's kind of my opinion of them. Super effective. You certainly want to coordinate the aesthetics with the community to make sure that they're done right.
Ditto. Yeah, they're effective and well received in my day-to-day work, and we haven't had any negative feedback or indications that people are not yielding to pedestrians where those RFBs are installed.
And I would offer that they're generally effective. They're not 100%. If you get 85% of the drivers obeying them, that's 85%, but it's not 100%. They're more effective, in my opinion, than in roadway warning lights for two reasons. One, the in roadway warning lights are down at the ground. So if you're the first vehicle, maybe you see them. If you're the second or third vehicle, you probably don't see them because the vehicle in front of you hides them from you. And also because they're in the roadway, they get fatigued. And we know that has been the case at that location. When we went out there the first time, half of the in-roadway warning lights were not working. So the RRFBs, I think, are more effective than the in-roadway warning lights. I don't want to mislead anyone to say they're 100% effective, but they are highly effective from all the data that I've seen. And then you compare that with the stop sign. On the other, one could argue that a stop sign is more effective because people stop every time, but do they? That's the real question. If you have a street where 89% of the traffic is on Meridian and 11% is on Oak, some motorists aren't going to stop every time. They may slow down, they may coast through, but they tend to get used to the idea that every time I come through here, or most of the time I come through here, I don't see any cross traffic, so I don't really need to stop completely. I can just kind of coast through. And that tends to be what some drivers do. So that's the trade-off as I see it.
An adjunct to that is if we were looking at the flashing beacons and we're looking at cost, you're saying you have the contract for it, Shahid, but then how much is that and versus how much is the installation that would cost for the stop signs? If we're just looking from a numbers cost perspective.
Stop sign cost is almost negligible as compared to the other one, so it's not a tough cost comparison is what is the effectiveness, between the two, where we get more safety. So one crash, engine crash can blow up the whole cost which we install. So once we install our traffic control devices, we really don't pay much to the result installation. What is the cumulative benefit we get from the traffic control devices?
But if you have the contract, so if you've got one more possibility, what's that price tag that we would need to take action on? So am I saying that's a $20,000, and if we want to do it, that's $20,000, and then if we want to take advantage of that, or what's the number?
So that cost can vary substantially depending upon the site condition. So design, I said, I can design it quickly because we have a contract in place and we already completed. So we can reinvent the same and having do that immediately. Then if I need to install on a site, depends upon the site conditions. Can I go solar? If there's enough sun, solar is the cheapest possible options. If we have a power drop close to, like we have on Meridian Avenue, we have a city-owned street light, so it is an LED, doesn't take much of power. I can easily hook up with the street, so that's cheap. But if there's no power drop and no solar, and then I have to tap power with Edison, that can get expensive because Edison may come back and say, I need to install a separate transformer to give you. So that all factor will be studied during design, but looking at the condition at that location, I think solar will be the best option to do that.
So if we want to go with the beacon, you have the contract in place to execute, and then the question is do we have funding to cover the cost in the budget?
We have to find the funding, and as I said, the council has approved to install the rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So we need to fund a couple of ways. Either I need to find some grant funds, for this one, or we have to dip into our reserves, which we have some reserves in the transportation site, which we keep for this pilot, or I have to shift my priorities to install this one. So, but
And then should we, let's say there's a green light, you're going to take advantage of this contract. You've got to go out and figure it out. You connect with Edison or whatever. Best case scenario, the new configuration would be in place for the residents and vehicles and drivers when potentially?
So it will take, let's say, a few weeks for us design. Then we have to put the construction award contract. That can take us 2 weeks, going through the council, writing a report, and bringing a contractor back into that. And then they have to order equipment. So we're looking about four months, from go, because contractor has to order the equipment and then start. So I would say it's a fair guess to say start. If I given a get go, no, we should plan on that to be in place in 4 months. And it will be very quickly because we have other 3 systems being installed. If it's a loan system, it might have taken even more time than this one.
So potentially by the end of the calendar year for the residents.
But for sure, and my hope is, Council Member Pramath can brief the council what the commission has decided. So, and then I have a go to proceed with the project,
And should we do the stop sign? If we said we want a 4-way stop there at Oak and Meridian, the time frame for that would be what time frame?
If we need a stop sign, we have to manufacture the stop sign. It can take about 8 to 12 weeks, depending upon how easy you are. Let's say about 12 weeks, depending upon our manufacturer who's going to manufacture the stop sign, the post, utility.
So it's not too much difference per
Right.
se, not a lot.
Yes, we can looking at,
Okay, I just want to get an understanding so that the residents would know, no matter which direction, what the time frame would be potentially. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Okay, so I have questions and comments, and I'm going to make a motion, which is probably going to fail. And then the rest of you could decide what you want to do. First, how is it that it takes 3 months to put a stop sign in? The one at Oak and Milan was approved and installed within weeks. Why would it take 3 months to get a stop sign?
We need
That
to.
doesn't make any sense to me.
No, we need to order the equipment, and generally once we place an order for a stop sign, there's manufacturers giving us 8 weeks to get the stop sign manufactured, So that's generally, so we might have, if we have installed it previously, we might have a stop sign in stock, available, Sometimes we do have a spare stop sign line. If some existing stop sign knocks down, we can't wait 4 days, 10 days to install. We need to have that equipment available so we can install it quickly. So that's what, but in the previous signs, we ordered parking signs for downtown, and it took almost 12 weeks to get those signs manufactured from them. Because if they're running a certain line of stop signs, they will not stop it and start doing 2 stop signs for us. So they'll finish that order and then get back to that. So it's a good.
Stop signs are a stock type item, right? There's standard dimensions requirements, right? It's not custom to each location, is it?
Yes, there is a standard stop sign item. So that's why we stop spare for our existing replacement signs.
Okay.
If
So I'm gonna, sorry, go ahead, Sheet.
if the manufacturer has to manufacture the sign, then I think it's a fair guess to assume that way. I don't want to tell you 2 weeks and then figure out I don't get stop sign for 8 to 12 weeks, which is
Okay, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it's going to be a lot shorter time to install stop signs than to install rectangular rapid flashing beacons, but that's not necessarily the criteria. I just wanted to point that out. So a couple things to point out before we come to a decision or an indecision. One of the interesting things about Meridian is the entire length of Meridian from Monterey to, I believe, south all the way to the city limit. There is not one all-way stop on that street. It's an interesting, I think it's an interesting piece of information. Second, I looked at the numbers for the Oak and Milan all-way stop, and it was 3762 vehicles in one direction, 1192 in the other. The pedestrian count was 95 total every single leg. within an hour and a half period. So earlier, certain people were mentioning, oh, well, this leg was this and this was that. Just so we're apples and apples, the Oak Milan study was at 95 and it was using crossings at every single leg of the intersection to come to that number. We have in the Zimmerman report 111 pedestrian crossings within a slightly longer period, right? 4 hours in one afternoon. It's right in there. It's on the same page that the 46 number that Shahid mentioned earlier is on. So the other issue for me is the RFB, which may or may not help pedestrians. Probably would be. It certainly would be better than what we have now. I think that seems pretty clear. My concern is it does zero to deal with the problem of turns from Oak onto Meridian. Whether you're going southbound, turning left or turning right, there are challenges. RFBs don't address those challenges, right? They do not control the traffic on Meridian so that you can turn safely from Oak onto Meridian. So that's a concern I have. I mean, I've witnessed it. It's when it's mentioned by Mr. Miller, and I've seen it, that it's a challenge. I think Commissioner Dunlap mentioned it too. So I think subjecting this intersection to the type of scrutiny that is being suggested, I think is to treat it differently than at least one other intersection where always stop was approved not terribly long ago. That's my feeling based on looking at the data and hearing everybody's arguments. So for me, yes, it would be great to have more analysis and data. Is there enough here to support it? Absolutely. And if this is the approach we're going to take every time we want to deal with an always stop, we're never going to have any in the city. And I don't know if that's a fair approach for the community. And we got to think about the safety of drivers. And there was a comment earlier about, well, isn't there traffic on Meridian actually going to stop? Well, the same could apply to stop signs throughout the city where there's an imbalance. For example, Oak and Milan, there's very little traffic travel on Milan. Primarily it's Oak. I think every time I've been to that intersection, there hasn't been anybody on Milan waiting to go north or south. It's always Oak. So, but I stop because it's the law, there's signage, right? And I'm guessing every once in a while it's enforced. So I assume the same would apply here. So, I mean, I guess we come from different perspectives and we can all use the information that's available to us to support our position. While it's important, everything everybody said, I think is very fair and appropriate. But we have to think about the community as well. And to say no every time and then come up with an alternative that may address one issue, but then not address the other issue, I think would be doing a disservice. And I'd really like to do something for the community. I think we've already said no to Meridian at Pine and Meridian and Maple, right? We said no to those as far as I can recall. And I think with Maple was no at this time. To say no here, right? I don't think it's addressing issues that are present and putting us off for another study and more evaluation. I mean, at some point, there's only so much time and resources and money. And I think at some point we have to say, okay, we're at a decision point. Let's make a decision and a recommendation. Now, again, this is going to go to the city council no matter what. If we say no, this can go to the city council and they're going to make the final decision and they can make a policy decision to put an always stop in. Now, notwithstanding what our recommendation is. On the other side, we can recommend the always stop and then they could say no for other reasons. So I'm not thinking that this is going to dissuade any of you and to come around, but I wanted to make sure everything I had to say was out there and on the record. And when we're finished with our comments, I want to make a motion to install the always stop. And if it fails, either for lack of a second or on a vote, that's fine. But I think it's important to move forward. So thank you for listening to me, Commissioner Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a couple comments regarding Milan and Oak. I'm on that stop twice a day, every day. And that's how I come home. That's how I go to work. And yes, I go to the office almost every day. So kind of back to normal. But I have not seen anyone run that stop sign in every time that I've done it, which is hundreds of times. Now, I agree the traffic is a lot less on Milan, but I have to say that I'm also seeing a lot more, and I don't know whether our numbers again are as accurate, but I also feel there's a lot more what I'm going to call recreational pedestrian activity around the city. Now, whether that's going to diminish as people get back more to work or such, and obviously school schedules, but I do think that we have to keep that in mind too, that there's a lot of pedestrian traffic out in our community. And that I do think, along with the Chair Abelson, that we need to take some actions and do things to support our community. I think in our last meeting, some of the public comments were anecdotal, but we did hear a lot about near misses and accidents and property damage and various things that took place at these intersections. So I do think it's something, and we know from the visits to the sites that there are issues there. So really want to make the comment regarding Oak and Milan. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. I think Commissioner Fisher was next.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to point out that there are stop signs on Meridian, but most of them are north of Monterey Road. But I would agree with you that between Alhambra and Monterey Road, there are no stop signs there. I'd like to point out a second point. The community is those who live on the street and those who use the street. It's not only the several hundred residents who live there, but it's also those who must travel that street to get where they need to go. And I would agree with Commissioner Dunlap. If there's any way we could reduce that amount of traffic, we should take those steps, but it's every user of that street. Third point I want to make is that I would be uncomfortable saying no, but I believe we need to say yes. When this matter came to us before, we had recommended edge lines. They were put in. We had recommended a center line. We had recommended curve warning signs, advisory speed signs, and we possibly could recommend going ahead with an RRFB with advanced RRFBs to let drivers know of the active crossing of a pedestrian. So yes, we can't just say no, we need to say yes. Because we don't say yes to a stop sign doesn't mean we're saying no, we may say yes to something else. The final point I'd like to make is, regardless of my personal opinion or anyone else's personal opinion, we need not set a bad precedent. It says in the MUTCD that the decision to put in always stop control should be based on an engineering study. We do not have an engineering study that justifies always stop control. What we have is a letter narrative from Rock Miller, who talked about things in general, but didn't address how it specifically applies to Meridian Avenue. So I'm more concerned about the process. We can't set a precedent where we put in always stop control without the support of an engineering study. What is that going to do for future requests throughout the city? It would put us in a position of being inconsistent, arbitrary, and I don't think we want to go there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dunlap.
Thank you, Chair. Depending on I guess it sounds like, this is something that will, that it seems like someone will, one of us will probably put forward a motion on this. Depending how the vote goes, I would ask staff maybe take a closer look at Mr. Miller's report. I think there could, I'm having trouble finding it now, but he says, like, on Oak Street, I would recommend that a plan be prepared to clearly indicate how to install the all-way stops and treat the crosswalk. And so to Commissioner Hughes's point and Commissioner Chair Abelson, like they mentioned, like how long would it take to go up? And I think there are, if we do put in a multi-way stop here, there are concerns as far as like the installation, like you might need to look at the geometrics, you know, take a look at the crosswalks. There's certainly in roadway warning lights right now that might need to be removed. I think one of the ramps at the intersection goes into a driveway, and so there's going to need to be a little bit of engineering done to just sort of figure out how to really implement a multi-way here. It's not. I don't think it's going to be as simple as just like putting up the R1-1 sign. I wanted to point that out in Mr. Miller's letter and not lose sight of that.
Thank you, Commissioner Dunlap. I'll just respond to that. The issues that you just raised are there no matter what. So, and have been there for quite some time. I don't think those are issues that have to be resolved to put an all-way stop in. I think those are issues that have to be resolved ultimately, no matter what we do. But I don't think they preclude installing an all-way stop. At least that's the way I read it. But reasonable minds may differ. Commissioner Liu.
Thank you, Chair Abelson. I have a question for city staff. I was wondering, without going into a full-blown engineering study, I definitely would feel a lot more comfortable if we had more information to act on, because we have had no real new information since last month. Would it be possible to do maybe a site distance analysis in-house, or just at least have that question for us answered, you know, relatively soon, as opposed to waiting for traffic volumes to come back and doing a full-blown volume study? Can we investigate, you know, site distance and you know, lay to rest that question independently to give us kind of slightly more to make a decision on? Thank you.
So this, I think staff will defer it to a consulting firm. There are 3 consulting firms we looked at to that, and they came to the same conclusion. So, and especially when the peer review was done, the peer review engineer, their consulting, they were drawn their attention that they have to take a look at the site distance, and they did, and their peer review did say that they observed all the field conditions here. Just on a side note, the staff did a cursory look at the site conditions requirement. It's not great, but it does meet the requirement of the California Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and it does meet the AASHTO requirements. You know. But further analysis, it will require a full-blown study, and that's one of the reasons. Once I was discussing with Mr. Miller, and that's what exactly he recommended. You know, it needs a full-blown study if you need to, and you need to go into the further details. He necessarily did not disagree with the findings of the previous studies, and he says so in the report. He says also in the report.
All right, thank you. I just thought the site distance issue was not clarified in the reports, but if we're happy with it, then thank you.
Okay, if excuse me, if there's nothing further, I'm going to make my motion, and we'll see where it goes. And then if somebody else has any other proposals or suggestions, assuming mine doesn't work, then we'll be all ears, of course. So I'm going to move that we recommend to the City Council that the city proceed with the installation of an all-way stop at the intersection of Meridian Avenue and Oak Street. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Hughes seconds. Thank you for that. Commissioner Dunlap raised his hand, probably the second.
I was going to ask
fair?
it. I was going to ask if it would be possible to make an amendment to your motion.
Well, it just depends. What's your proposed amendment?
Kind of going back to my comment and Mr. Miller's report, I think the city will want to have documentation by an engineer for the multi-way stop, whether that be a report or some sort of sign and striping plan that's approved by an engineer for that control. I think that's something that will be requested of the city, should, you know, as part of discovery, you know what I mean, and lawsuits, and that's something that the city will probably be asked to provide. Typically, the documentation, the actual report, the engineering report, those typically jurisdictions don't hang around too long because those are subject to record retentions. But I think I would want someone to prepare like some sort of signing and striping plan for the implementation. That would be my amendment.
So, excuse me, and I did listen and pay
Sorry, that's a
attention,
lot of
but
comments.
so what, could you
Yeah,
succinctly restate what your
sure.
amendment
Yeah.
is?
You know, I would amend it to, instead of recommend that a multi-way stop be prepared, that that an engineer prepare a plan, like a signing and striping plan to implement a multi-way stop at that location.
Okay, so forgive me, it may be long or late in the day. So are you saying the motion would be to, as I made it, to recommend proceeding with an always stop at the location along with what you're suggesting?
Correct, along with a signing and striping plan or an engineering plan for it.
That addresses the concerns raised by Mr. Miller?
That addresses the concerns raised by Mr. Miller regarding the signing and striping and crosswalks and those things of that nature.
Okay, I accept that as friendly. Commissioner Hughes, is that okay with you?
Well, Mr. Chair, what might solve the problem is taking exact language from the report from Mr. Miller that says for Oak and Meridian, based upon the unique intersection geometrics, the marked crosswalk and the street usage further to the east, there is ample justification to conclude that all-way stops are appropriate for this location. Due to the unique geometrics, I would recommend that a plan be prepared to clearly indicate how to install the all-way stops and treat the crosswalk. Commissioner Dunlap, would that address your plan issue? We almost could pick that up word for word from the report, which again, I think is an engineering study, which would justify us moving forward. Because this is saying that everything is justified for a four-way stop at that location, if I'm reading this report correctly.
I think, yeah, that would address my concern. I didn't read Mr. Miller's report and read implement a multi-way stop. I read implement, develop a plan to implement the multi-way stop.
Yeah, I would recommend the plan be prepared to clearly indicate how to install. So I think he's looking at some of the points that you brought up.
Okay, so I'm going to rephrase it because I think both of you make really good points. So I'm going to withdraw the motion I made just for the sake of clarity and restate it. So the motion would be to recommend the installation of an always stop at the intersection of Meridian Avenue and Oak Street, and that a plan be prepared to clearly indicate how to install the always stops and treat the sidewalk. Is that okay with you two?
I will second that motion.
Okay, Commissioner Dunlap, does that address your?
Yes, a plan prepared by an engineering plan.
Okay.
Can I say something, if can I say, if you don't mind, just to do that? That will require us to hire a design engineer on board, come back and do a full-blown design of the street, including the relocation of the crosswalk to a proper place where everybody can cross, and and then provide a justification for installation of a sign. So it will be a process which require resources, effort, and time.
So what is it? And Commissioner Fisher, I see your hand raised. But Commissioner Dunlap, what is it that you're trying to achieve or address exactly? What is the issue?
The placement of the crosswalks, the placement of the stop bar, the angle of the crosswalk, the presence of the in-roadway warning lights, all of those things.
Okay, and how is that different, Shahid, than what you would normally do when installing an always stop? What's the additional work?
Normally, always stop sign don't require this work. We think the geometry is also good. So it is a simple process. We'll just go and install the stop sign. But in this case, you have a drainage issues around that. That could get very expensive because when the engineer come back and he recommends certain things, then we are another issue which we have to address. And if we don't address that issue, that's another thing which will stay on our books, So it's a complicated intersection. We looked at, I think I looked at with Commissioner Fisher, myself and Tatvik, and there was a lot of challenges to do that. And that could get quite expensive, hiring a design engineer and doing that, thing. And there was, just to give you a history of that, in the previous, we tried to do that, and some of the consultants refused to do the work because they thought until unless exactly what been pointed, until unless you fix that, we will not proceed with the next work because it has to be brought to the required design standards.
Okay, so the options are proceed with the always stop.
Yeah.
That's one. Two, proceed with the always stop and address the crosswalk challenges that I think which is what Commissioner Dunlap is trying to address. Does that sound right, Commissioner Dunlap? It's the pedestrian crosswalk layout and challenges associated with it, which you want to address.
Correct. It's a skewed, we've already talked about it being a skewed intersection.
Right.
It's a unique configuration. And so.
And that's there regardless, right? That's there as we sit here, right?
Yes.
And they are not required to be addressed. It's a question. They are not required to be addressed to put an always stop in. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, if you're asking the staff, they are, if
Yes.
they use that, so yes, they are not required to do that. But if we get into the design detail, which is a good point, then we want to make sure everything on the road comes up to the latest design standard and meet all the ADA specification which we're supposed to meet. And that can significantly delay this process, of hiring a consultant, going into the design, doing a survey of everything and then finding a location. And maybe after doing all this exercise, we may still not be able to find an appropriate place for a crosswalk. There's a
Which
lot
I
of,
think is what's going to be the result. So, and I am going to get Commissioner Fisher. I haven't forgotten you. Direct question for you, Director Abbas. If it's the recommendation of this commission and the council supports it, to proceed with installing an always stop at that location, that can be done without addressing all of the pedestrian crossing challenges that have been identified, that have been there
right,
for some time. Is
right.
that okay?
Both things
Thank you.
both things can be separated, but those challenges remain. We need to address them separately, but those should be addressed. But they are two separate issues.
And we'd have to deal with that if we went forward with an RFB as well, correct?
Yes, those are two separate issues, right?
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I would just offer that I thought the added portion to your original amendment is well intended, but I think it seriously complicates what you would hope to do. I think as Director Abbas has indicated, there are no good, easy answers for relocating the crosswalks. There are catch basins at that intersections. There are drainage issues. There are closely spaced driveways. And it is not easy to find an optimal solution given the presence of all those in combination with the skewed intersections. So I would not think you'd want to complicate your original intention with that added part to do a design. I think it's going to complicate it. But I want to make this point clear. Much of the work I do in my post-retirement years is on tort liability. And I work with a lot of public agencies. And the key thing that comes through is if you're going to put in a striping plan or you're going to put in a new signal, that you have a design that has been stamped and signed by a registered engineer. That gives you some tort liability protection. It's not a guarantee, but it could give you a motion for summary judgment in that the installation was prepared by a registered engineer. It is also important that when the NUTCD says that an engineering study should be, it always stop should be based on an engineering study. If that is in the California MUTCD and an installation is put in that is not based on an engineering study, then you open yourselves up. Now, I'm not saying that that means that the city is going to be sued, but the way it works in the tort liability world is if there is one little thing wrong with an intersection and someone gets injured, the attorneys will point to some deviation from standard practice. And I just think it's a dangerous precedent to put in an installation when you don't have the engineering study to back it up. I can't stress that too much. Not that I'm saying that always stop is not justified. I haven't taken a position on that, but you really need an engineering study to protect the city from tort liability.
Okay, so I feel like we're now at oral argument and people have taken positions because I think we have an engineering study and we also have another report by a qualified engineer that recommends it. So I would disagree with you that we don't have one. Second, I would say that if we're aware of a condition at an intersection that's dangerous or a safety concern and we do nothing to address the concerns that have been raised, that also to me creates exposure. So sitting and doing nothing at an intersection we know has problems, I think is incorrect. I think installing RRFBs doesn't address all the issues. So I very much appreciate, I'm just going to go back to my motion. Whatever happens, it happens. It's okay. And I very much appreciate Commissioner Dunlap's recommendation. I would accept that as a friendly amendment as long as it's a two-step, that the motion is proceed with the always stop now, right? And plan to come up with the design to address long-term the pedestrian crosswalk issues that have been identified. I mean, if Commissioner Dunlap, you're okay with that?
I would just say I don't read Mr. Miller's report and see a recommendation to put in a multi-way stop. Like I see that it's to prepare a plan. And I think Commissioner Fisher points out some, the importance of having something signed and stamped by an engineer, like a signing plan or signing a striping plan.
Okay.
If not, and in best cases, a report recommending it.
Okay, so your friendly amendment is rejected. And we'll proceed with the motion that I made, which is to proceed with the I mean, I disagree with what you said, but I think we've gone round and round and everybody has their position. So I'd like to proceed with my motion to recommend the installation of an always stop immediately, approved by City Council at the intersection of Meridian Avenue and Oak Street. That's the motion that was seconded by Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
I believe. Is that fair? Okay. Okay.
Point of order. We've had so many motions, friendly amendments, restating of the motion. I think we need a clear motion and a clear second before we vote.
Okay, I thought I just did that.
At this point, I don't know what the motion is.
Okay, the motion is simple. It's to recommend to the City Council that the city proceed with the installation of an always stop at the intersection of Meridian Avenue and Oak Street, period.
And do we have a second?
I will second that motion.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hughes. So at this point, I think we'll call the vote, yes? Leona, do you want to do it or should I do it?
I can do it. Chair Abelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
No.
Commissioner Dunlap,
No.
Commissioner Liu,
No.
and Commissioner Hughes.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion fails 2-3. Does anybody else have a motion they would like to make on this topic? I'm not saying, oh, here we go. Commissioner Fisher.
Well, I don't necessarily have a motion, but I wanted to clarify with Director Abbas. Would you need council approval to make a determination to put RRFBs at the intersection? Or do you have the authority to do that now?
Council has already approved last year for installation of rectangular rapid flashing beacon, and we went back to the community and we told them we're going to install it. That's why the council approved it, and it was put on hold from the community for further study, so we did not. The council already approved it. I think Council Member Pramit can, in his brief, can brief the council your recommendation, and we can move forward with the installation and design and installation of rectangular flashing beacon.
Councilmember Primuth.
Before I make any report, I would like to have a motion that does pass out of the commission of something that you guys would recommend. There may be council authority already on the books, but it would be good to have it underlined if that's what you want to do.
Thank you. So would anybody like to make a motion regarding, excuse me, RRFBs? I won't be making one, so it's up to you all if you want to. Commissioner Fisher.
I move that the commission support the installation of edge lines, the installation of curve warning signs, advisory speed plates, and rectangular rapid flashing beacons on Meridian at Oak Street, in addition to advance RRFBs to warn of the active crossings.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll offer a second.
Okay, Commissioner Dunlap seconds. Any discussion before we vote?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Hughes.
So based on what we talked about earlier, so still, if this goes forward, the council approves Director Abbas, so this would be in place by the end of the year, potentially.
That's my hope is, we can proceed as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And I just have a clarification question as well. So if the commission, if RRFBs are approved by all those who need to approve it, and they're installed, that means that there will not be there cannot be an always stop at that intersection, right?
No, we cannot install a stop sign on Meridian. So there will be a stop sign on the side street, but not on Meridian.
Okay, so just to be clear, if the city proceeds with RFBs at that location, there cannot be an always stop at that location. Is the answer yes?
No, we cannot install both the devices together. They have to be separate.
Okay, so the answer to my question is yes, right? We can't, if we do the RFBs, then we cannot do an always stop.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, both of the.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yes, and they cannot be installed at the same location. They have to be
Okay,
separate.
thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, Director Abbas, how feasible is it that you would be able to install RRFBs in 4 months by mid-September?
So if council is okay with that, so we already have, I said before, we already have a contractor, a consultant on board who have almost finished the design of 3 rectangular flashing beacon. So we can just need to give him a go ahead, and I have a price quote for him already for the 4th one. So I just need to give him a proceed with the project, issue amendment to the PO. He can finish the design in 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, and then we bid the project out. So I think it's very feasible to do that.
Well, yeah, and I asked because I think it's important and vital that we have an improvement on Radiant Avenue by the time that the new school semester starts. So is it likely you would be able to undertake that within 4 months?
We will do everything. If everything goes back, if the equipment is not on back order, which I hope is not, because this equipment is very widely used through the nation nowadays. So there are many vendors available, but certainly I cannot promise you what happens next 4 months. But looking at now, I think it is very likely we can have it within the given time period.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions, discussion? Okay, so we have a motion, excuse me, by Commissioner Fisher, seconded by Commissioner Dunlap. And I'm not going to repeat it. We heard it. Leona, would you call the vote, please?
Chair Abelson,
Can I
No.
make a clarification before you do that? Just make sure I captured everything for the motion. So the motion is to install the edge lines, advanced warning signs, rectangular rapid flashing beacon, along with advanced warning flashing beacon for rectangle rapid flashing beacon. And it will come back with all the marking advanced warning teeth, which is precursor to the rectangular rapid flashing beacon where the motors have to stop. So with the payment marking.
Oh, okay. Is that correct, Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, you could have the yield here to PED markings, right?
Yeah, yield marking.
Yeah, the yield markings along with the sign that goes with it, yield here for PED. So there'd be the additional yield markings, which we haven't specifically discussed, but that is understood it would be part of the overall design.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad Director Abbas, you mentioned that. So I'm withdrawing my vote for a second because I have a question. Is what Commissioner Fisher, is what you're proposing going to address the issues that Commissioner Dunlap raised about the need for a redesign of the crosswalk at that intersection, or not?
I'm silent on that.
Okay, so it's not part of your motion?
No.
Okay. Councilmember Primet.
I'm so sorry. I did ask for a motion, and really what I intended this to be is a backup motion. If the city council wants to proceed to put in all-way stops, they can certainly do that. But I guess this motion is contingent on the possibility that the city council does not want to proceed with all-way stops. Then we would rely on your recommendation for the alternative. That's really what I'm aiming at here.
Okay, so, boy, this is a complicated one. So I understand what you just said. That's not Commissioner Fisher's motion. So I can't.
I don't understand what was just said then.
Okay.
I propose this alternative to say this is the backup if the stop sign isn't proceeded with.
Right. Essentially, what I'm saying is whatever motion comes out, the city council may be asked to look at the stop sign, notwithstanding the commission's failure to recommend it. So really, what I'd like to have is a consensus or majority of recommendation from the commission on what to do to improve the safety, pedestrian and traffic safety at that intersection. So I don't think it's incompatible with what Commissioner Fisher said. I just wanted to, let you know that it's not really that if you vote for this motion, it's not because you're not voting for the stop signs. So that's really what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Okay. And so one more, sorry, Leona, one more piece of information. I have a problem with the motion if it's not going to address the issues associated with the design of the pedestrian crossing that are identified in the Miller report. And that's not part of the current motion. So I just want, it's just a discussion point. But we can go ahead with the vote. Sorry, Leona.
That's okay.
So we had the motion, we had the second, we clarified. You asked me first, right?
Yes, I did. And you said
Oh,
no.
okay. I said no.
Does that remain the same? No?
That remains, no change.
All right. Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Commissioner Liu,
Yes.
and Commissioner Hughes.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. John, you have your information from our commission on this topic. That's Councilmember Primmett.
4-1, right?
And we'll see what the council does.
Thank you all. Thank
yeah,
you for your comment.
The motion passes 4-1. That's what I heard.
Yes.
That's what I heard too.
So
Okay, we're done with this item. The next
I have
item, and
Can I just make a quick question? Can Councilmember Primuth, can you be sure to voice to the city council when this does come up, the concerns that Commissioner Fisher brought up regarding his concern about liability and tort protection?
Absolutely, Commissioner Hughes. I thought that was a great point. And as a lawyer, I'm always on the lookout for liability risks.
Thank you.
okay, well, I think I submitted responses to that too, but
Chair,
if the council member, if our council liaison is going to report to the council, I'd appreciate it be done fairly and even-handedly. And to not only report the results of our votes, but also to fairly and even-handedly report the content of it if he's going to delve into it. Anyway, anything else on this topic, Director Abbas?
if I may be excused now.
Oh, yeah, yes. Thank you for hanging out with us, and I'm sorry to delay you.
Thank you. No, my pleasure.
Have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And forgive me if this was covered. I believe we're at item 2,
Yes.
update on implementation of citywide neighborhood traffic management plan. Okay.
Yes. That is.
Okay, Garrett, do you have anything to share with us?
I know we had discussed the last time was some differences of opinion for the traffic counts on the report, and I think that's the last sticking point, if I remember correctly, for what would activate the calming measures to do the studies, was the volume of traffic per street. Am I correct in that, Chair?
Right, so I think where we were, and unfortunately Director Abbas just left us, but some time ago, the commission went a few rounds with the draft NTMP, and we came to a final draft that we recommended. And then after that, Director Abbas expressed some concern about one of the thresholds that were put in place in that final draft. And I think he indicated that he was going to come back to us to discuss it, but that hasn't happened as of yet. So I would, and in the meantime, the NTMP has not been presented to the city council. So it would be helpful, I think, if there is a concern that Director Abbas has, that perhaps we can get it on the next agenda and either address it, either agree with him that we should make the change he thinks we should make or not, and then have it go forward. Is that, you think that's feasible?
I think so. I think we could bring it back as an action item for recommendation for adoption by council from the commission. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've done that once, but in light of the issue Director Abbas raised, I'd rather get it handled and then moved on, instead of in limbo. Okay, great. I'm sorry. With commissioners, did you have anything you wanted to discuss or comment on in this regard?
Well, really quickly, Commissioner
oh,
Hughes, has Commissioner Liu or Commissioner Dunlap seen the report?
We have not.
Okay,
No.
I will send it to you, or Liana will send it to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hughes?
I just had a quick question, Garrett, how that is going to dovetail into it, because I know it's been sort of like the missing link lately, the general plan. Because I think there was discussion to make sure that there was synergy between that and what was happening with the general plan regarding the traffic plan, so that everything is in sync regarding how everything's going to integrate between the general plan, the neighborhood traffic plan, the bicycle plan, our, complete streets, so that our community can have a full picture of our traffic future, to put it kind of in a nutshell.
I don't have an answer for you at this time, but what I can do is follow up. And if for some reason we can, because of those implications that you just mentioned, we can't bring it back at the next meeting for a final vote, then I will provide the commission that update and why.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Anyone else? Okay, great. All right, so thank you, Garrett. Next up, I believe, let's see, formation of citywide preferential parking district ad hoc committee number 5. So I asked that this be placed on the agenda solely because when we talked, I don't think there's a report for it. When we discussed this topic a couple of meetings ago, Commissioners Dunlap and Liu kindly stepped up to help work on developing a policy. And I thought it was important that we formalize their work and create the ad hoc committee comprised of the two of them, assuming they're still willing to take on the task, and that we can then have them report monthly as to any updates they have. Because I think this is, at the end of the day, while we spent a lot of time on a particular stop sign at a particular location, the commission is really supposed to be talking about policy. And it would be great if we could start moving forward with some of these bigger picture items and projects, whether it's the NTMP or the parking policy. So I thought, instead of it sort of wafting out there, that maybe we could form the committee and then have them get going on it as they are able to, and then report back as they're able to. Any thoughts, comments, discussion? Commissioners Liu and Dunlap, are you still okay with this?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Wilson. I am okay with it. I guess I just wasn't sure how to bring up the materials that we have collected so far. I have discussed it with Commissioner Dunlap intermittently over the last few months, but as you know, we've been kind of working on the other ad hoc committee, the COVID-19 one. So this was kind of just a research project. But yes, I feel that we have collected enough policy information, at least in terms of examples, that we can move forward with bringing them forward to either this commission or to city staff, or just to get feelers out about what it would look like or what would be feasible.
Thank you, Commissioner Liu. Commissioner Dunlap, anything you want to? You don't have to say anything, but just
No.
give you the chance.
I concur. It makes sense to formalize this ad hoc and then also have it as a standing item on the agenda until we reach some sort of policy recommendation or resolution to it. So with that, I'll make a motion to formally create the preferential parking district ad hoc committee.
And I'll second.
Okay. Will you accept a friendly amendment by adding the word citywide in front of preferential?
Absolutely, citywide.
Okay.
Preferential
Okay,
parking.
thank you. All right. Any questions, discussion? I'm guessing there's no public comment, but I better check. Leona? Okay. Would you would you please call the roll?
Sure.
The vote. Sorry.
Chair, that's okay. Chair Abelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Commissioner Liu,
Yes.
and Commissioner Hughes.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion passes 5-0. Thank you again to Commissioners Liu and Dunlap for taking this on. I really appreciate it on behalf of the entire city. Well, Vice Chair Fisher did such an amazing job going through so many items in the half hour that I wasn't here that we don't have much left to do, which is terrific. So next up are the commission-led discussions. The first is the SR 710 Mobility Improvement Projects Ad Hoc Committee, which is Commissioner Fisher and I. We had a call just the other day with Director Abbas, and I thought it might be helpful if Commissioner Fisher just gave a quick debrief on that and let people know what's going on and where we are. So Vice Chair, Fisher, would you take it away?
Yes, thank you. It just so happens that during the city staff comments, Director Abbas touched on this somewhat, but we had discussed with him the status of the projects on Fair Oaks and with the loop ramp. We weren't sure where they were going. It seemed like there was some delay, and we had a discussion with Director Abbas. He indicated that there are basically 3 projects that will affect Fair Oaks Avenue and the interchange. And the first one is with the Rogan funds that will approximately a $9 million undertaking. That'll put in new equipment, new signal equipment along Fair Oaks Avenue. That project will take about 9 months from the time it is awarded until the construction is completed. And then there is a second phase for Fair Oaks Avenue, and that's about a $4 to $5 million project. And that will put in the trunk line, the fiber optic cable to allow our signal system to communicate with each other along Fair Oaks Avenue. And in addition to communicate with the city of Pasadena and the city of Alhambra. And that's another project. That's about a $4 to $5 million undertaking. And that will take slightly less time. I think it was 3 to 6 months. And then we were primarily concerned about the loop ramp study because that hasn't been proceeding. And Director Abbas indicated that the Rogan Fund project was on a tight timeline because it's funds from way back, and they had to proceed with that and get that going. And he said that within the next 2 weeks, he would share with Commissioner Abelson and myself the scope of work for the loop ramp study. And then that would proceed to go out to bid and to go out for design and implementation. But basically, the first two projects on Fair Oaks would probably be implemented sometime within the next 2 to 3 years. And then the loop ramp project would proceed after that. And so the signal synchronization, the signal upgrades, the signal communication, all of the replacement of the signal equipment on Fair Oaks Avenue would be in place within the next 3 years at such time that the loop ramp project would proceed. So Director Abbas indicated that he's had some staff shortages. He's getting some staff on board soon, and he believed he would be able to proceed with the loop ramp undertaking shortly, sure, with both Commissioner Abelson and I within the next 2 weeks. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's great. Thank you very much, Commissioner Fisher. Commissioner Hughes.
Just two questions, and thank you, Commissioner Fisher and Abelson, for taking this on, and John for your leadership on the loop ramp. Two questions, kind of going back to, did I understand correctly that it's phase 2 that we might have the ability to impact the bulb outs? And then in phase 3, the loop ramp, we were able to address the issues that Caltrans had when they said there wasn't the radius or whatever. So that's been sort of solved if we're going to be able to go out for drawings?
My understanding, correct me if you heard differently, Commissioner Abelson, but the Rogan Fund project is going to put in new signal equipment. The Fair Oaks Avenue project is going to put in the fiber optic cable and the communication devices. The loop ramp project is going to put in the capacity improvements, which could include selective bulb out removal and the restriping and the reconfiguration that fits not only the new loop ramp near the interchange, but also the reconfiguration you need leading up to it. So that may include removal of bulb outs. That was our understanding. Regarding the issue of the design, I've had an informal communication with Yoga Chandran, who developed the concept plan in an engineered scaled basis. And they've done some tweaks to the design. And they have told me that they believe they can address all of Caltrans's concerns. You just have to go through their process. They believe that they can make it context sensitive and justify it that way. I need to see their next iteration of the design. I need to have another communication with them. But based on that, things are looking positive.
Oh, that's great news. Thank you so much.
And I agree with Commissioner Fisher, just a couple of clarifications. So, the 3 projects, the first is the Fair Oaks single synchronization, and that's the fiber optics. And it's also the creation of something along the lines of a traffic operations center. And that's the project that's been outstanding for quite some time, that we heard about on the prior commission. That's finally coming to fruition. So that's terrific news. And then next would be the Rogan project that John talked about, which is a lot of equipment. It's the ITS system and it's equipment upgrades. And then the third, which is unfortunately the furthest out, is the infrastructure changes, including the bulb outs and various other things. That's the project that's funded with the 70 million Measure R funds. So that's probably the most interesting in terms of what we've been looking forward to for so long, but that's sort of the order of things. But it's all happening. So we have a lot of progress going on. It just takes some time, but and there's some concerns were raised about the environmental review process. And after Commissioner Fisher and I spoke with Director Abbas, we're confident that the fact that the Rogan project is proceeding now, and then the study and work related to the interchange and the infrastructure on Fair Oaks is next, will not impact or impede any environmental review process that needs to happen or impact our ability to be reimbursed. So I think it's good news. It's just patience is required. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to add or ask about? Okay, terrific. Well, thank you again, Vice Chair Fisher, for that. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Dunlap.
Yeah, I have one question, I guess for Garrett. The projects, will you be scoping out any additional like traffic calming enhancements as part of this project? I understand like the purpose of these projects are capacity projects to move cars. However, I know in Fair Oaks, there's the uncontrolled marked crosswalk at Spruce, and I think that's a popular crosswalk. There are currently bus stops there, and I think it's popular in some ways, because to go down to Huntington to cross Fair Oaks is somewhat out of the way, and it's an odd intersection to cross. I like potentially a pedestrian hybrid beacon or a hawk signal, or I mean, if you put an RFB there, not to be like put RFBs everywhere, but you wouldn't be able to coordinate it. And so if the purpose is to really coordinate traffic on Fair Oaks, when we have people crossing that crosswalk, you're not going to be able to coordinate it if people are crossing. Also, I'll add to, if you're not aware, like when people are making right turns from Huntington Drive to head north on Fair Oaks, it's really tough they come around that curve pretty fast because it's a free right, and then that crosswalk just hits you. And I think right now we only have one pedestrian warning sign on the right. And I think there should be something on the left, just so when someone comes around that turn, it's like, hey, like there's a crosswalk here. So I know that might not be fully within the scope of the project, but I would just want to put a pin in that as we're thinking about increased volumes on Fair Oaks, that we really take that crossing into consideration.
Yeah, so so part of the ITS program we're looking into as we're designing it is, the pedestrian bikes and cars and how they can all get along and make that, flow as best as we can. So I'm pretty sure, I'll double check the scope, but I'm pretty sure Spruce is going to be looked at as part of the project. Now, for something as simple as adding a crosswalk ahead sign in that triangle piece on the left of that intersection at Huntington, that's something staff can look into and do short term. That's not something that needs to wait for the other part. That's something we can do.
Yeah, I understand. I wanted to just throw that out there, like possibly consider some additional controls, like a hybrid beacon or something that you'd be able to coordinate.
So I'll just add that when our and the former Freeway and Transportation Commission came up with the list of Measure R projects for the corridor, and there's a detailed list, most of which was put together by Commissioner Fisher and myself. There are a lot of detailed mini projects, including bulb out removal at key locations. And I do remember something about Hawk pedestrian signal work. And I just don't remember, as I sit here, what location that was, but your comment is a terrific one that will prompt me and us when we do get the draft scope for the interchange project, which includes infrastructure all the way up and down the corridor, to ensure that the Measure R projects that we recommended and council approved are part of that scope, which hopefully includes, and if it doesn't, maybe we can include what you're suggesting.
Yeah, and that's the nice part about this, albeit a long 3-phase project, is that anything we miss in one of the phases, we can kind of catch it up with the other, and that's kind of layered and designed purposefully. So like if there's some backbone that we miss in Fair Oaks, in this first phase, we can put it in phase 2. So it's kind of, they all overlap and intermingle, which makes it confusing for someone who is uninitiated. But then once you kind of get more familiar with all the projects and how they do interconnect, it's actually very smart.
Well, on that brilliant note, if there's nothing further, we can move on to, nothing further. Okay, good. Number 7 on our agenda, Ramona Avenue Neighborhood Traffic Management Ad Hoc Committee. So I had mentioned at the last meeting, I believe, that because this is one of our ad hocs, that I thought it was important to have this on the agenda, whether there's something specific to report or not, as a placeholder as we move forward. And I apologize for not being here during public comment. I believe there was going to be a comment regarding Ramona, and maybe it's for this item, but I'm not sure.
I have 2 public comments for this item.
All right, would you please read those?
Oh, sure. So the first one is from Renee Rubin. I live at 1810 Ramona Avenue. The past few weeks, the traffic has been terrible on Ramona Avenue during the drop-off and pickup times for Holy Family. The cars for Holy Family line up and down Ramona and cause traffic and safety issues in the neighborhood. The cars, minivans, SUVs sit and idle every weekday. Over the years, I have seen dangerous situations created as kids walking to high school and middle school almost get run over. Sometimes the cars block my driveway and I cannot even get out, and other times the cars block the crosswalks. The traffic lately has been backing up all the way to Huntington, and this is not safe for the neighborhood at all. The families should have to park and walk their kids to school just like all the parents do at the public schools in South Pasadena. I do not understand why the families that send their kids to Holy Family get this special treatment to the detriment of the neighborhood. The families should have to use their other lot and usual street parking. Their reason for not doing this is the students having to cross Fremont. Students at every other school in the district cross busy streets every day. This has been an ongoing problem. I attended a few meetings at some transportation studies were being done prior to the pandemic, and still nothing has been done. The lineup of cars from outside the city idling, polluting the neighborhood, disregarding traffic laws, and creating dangerous situations is unacceptable. The next one that I have is from Joanne Knuckles, and she is submitting this one on behalf of her neighbor Craig. Mike and I are submitting for our neighborhood listed below. And it's a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 neighbors. The Ramona Avenue residents request that MTech agendize for the June meeting an action item to make recommendations to the appropriate city body for traffic and safety improvements around the South Pasadena High School and Holy Family School to be instituted in time for adjustments to be made before the beginning of the school year, fall 2021. The pandemic and absence of schools in session provided an opportunity for our neighborhood to realize how much we are negatively impacted by school activities, which cause safety issues for our residents, our children, and those attending the school from outside our neighborhood and city. Priority should be given for those actions which provide the most benefits, such as staggered school time to provide less congestion at the start of the school day, as well as not allowing the Holy Family drop off and pickup to continue lining up on our neighborhood streets, and instead require them to park in the lot behind the St. Joseph Center and walk students to campus. We ask that you consider prioritizing actions for the Ramona Avenue Traffic Management Plan and city staff reports from the past to identify the problems and recommend solutions. This issue has been ongoing for many years and needs to be resolved before the beginning of the 2021 school year. We have witnessed too many drivers making unsafe and illegal decisions because of the Holy Family School drop-off pickup that could end with tragic results for our children and residents. That's all that I have.
Great. Thank you, Leona.
Mhm.
Commissioner Fisher, anything you want to comment on at this time?
Well, I can comment on my observations. Commissioner Abelson and I went out there on a Sunday just to walk around the school and look at the traffic controls that were there. And we had some ideas on where we could create loading zones, and I'll let Larry address that if he wishes to. But that was before the high school, South Pasadena High School, was back in session. And so I went out there. I've gone out there twice now in the morning to look at the situation for Holy Family since the high school wasn't in operation yet, South Pass High School. And I noticed that the operation for Holy Family School is a little bit different now than it was when we received a video showing how bad it was from a few years ago. It showed traffic going into Holy Family Church driveway on Oak and coming out on Oak, and then circling to go north on Ramona Avenue to get to Rollin, to get to the signal at Fremont. The 2 times I've been there, the pattern has been changed. The pattern is that cars deliver their students, and I guess most are driving their students because they're coming from some distance away. They drive north on Ramona, turn right on Oak, turn left into the driveway of Holy Family, proceed with the drop-off, proceed north through the lot, come out on Rollin, and most of them turn right on Rollin and go to the signal at Fremont. So they are not circling in a clockwise fashion, coming out of the driveway at Oak and then going on Ramona north of Oak Street. So what that means is that the problem for residents right now for Holy Family, due to Holy Family School, is on Oak south of Ramona. I'm sorry, Oak south, I'm sorry. It's on Ramona south of Oak. And I witnessed when I was there between 7:30 and 8, I witnessed a 20-minute period where traffic was queued on Ramona from Oak southerly to the next intersection, which I think is Pine and maybe Spruce, but they queued back to Pine and just a little bit beyond that. And it was very queued up for about a 10 to 15, 20-minute period. And then suddenly it dissipates rapidly around 8 o'clock. And that's the situation there. I'm not sure what can be done. So then I went out on April 28th on a Wednesday between 7:30 and 8:30 to look at what is happening now that South Pass High is open. How does that complicate the situation? And I noted hardly any arrivals coming to South Pasadena High. And I've learned that that some students elect to stay home. Some students, part of the students then will come on 2 days a week, and then the other part of the student body will come the other 2 days of the week. So it is not like it used to be. It is not normal. Plus, school starts at 8:30 at South Pass High currently, as opposed to Holy Family, which starts at 8. So right now it's staggered, and the demand at South Pasadena High is very low right now. I did not see any loading of students for South Pass High on Ramona between Oak and Rollin. I'm sure that that has occurred pre-pandemic and may occur post-pandemic. But the bottom line is that we cannot really assess the situation with the high school until we see what their new opening times are going to be and to see if they're going to have a full opening come the new fall semester. So I think that's all we can do now. But as I indicated earlier, we had some ideas on how we could improve the loading around South Pasadena High. And Larry, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, so we looked at Fremont, and correct me if I get my notes wrong, but and we can go into more detail maybe at the next meeting, but we looked at Fremont at the frontage of the high school. It's all red zone. And Fremont is wide there. There's almost enough room for 2 cars next to each other in each travel lane. So what apparently is happening right now is because there's red zone in front of the high school, that there is drop-off activity on Rollin between Fremont and Diamond, and that conflicts, or has in the past conflicted with traffic related to Holy Family School. And some videos were shown to us from years past that documented that. So John and I came up with some ideas about creating a more efficient use of the high school frontage for loading and unloading, and perhaps separate, to the extent there is crossover traffic or conflicts, to separate the traffic. But a lot of it, as John suggests, is going through the church property. So as long as it's turning right out of that driveway, it shouldn't be conflicting with the high school. So I know the residents are looking for staggered start times, but as we sit here, I think it's difficult for us to suggest that, because the conditions are such that it doesn't seem to be justified. Now, of course, it's unusual. So the most we can do, it seems, is we can come back at the next meeting with some proposals for things that can be done to help better organize the traffic and the unloading and separate the traffic from the two schools, as perhaps an initial set of suggestions, which would just be striping, signage, those kinds of things that could be implemented over the summer before the schools start. And then when the schools start August, September, we can go back. Hopefully everything is relatively normal and the patterns are normalized. And we could take a look at what other issues exists and come up with potential solutions. So I think what John and I are looking at is maybe a two-phase approach to this, maybe some initial thoughts for next month, and then some additional thoughts once the schools are back in session. Does that sound right to you, John?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments for either of us in this regard? Seeing none, we can move along to.
Sorry, Larry. I'm sorry, I do have a question.
Sure, please.
So it's been suggested by the neighbors that that Holy Family have a change in their drop off, that they would drop off on the other side of Fremont because they have property there, they have a parking lot there, and the students walk across Fremont Avenue. That was a public comment, and I think it's been proposed several other times by neighbors. Are there any commissioners that wish to address that?
I can't address it, but I did look at the lot on the east side of Fremont, and there was no drop-off activity there. And I think that's something that probably needs to be pursued to disperse the demand, to reduce the extensive queuing that occurs for a 20-minute period on Ramona south of Oak. I'm not sure how to pursue it through this commission, but it's something that probably needs to be looked into.
I mean, it would certainly address the concerns raised by the residents of Ramona, because it would move the traffic across the street. I guess the concern is, or the counter issue or counter concern is the moving of school children across Fremont. I'm guessing that's what the pushback is going to be. I would say that that those intersections are signalized, and there could be crossing guards. So I appreciate Councilmember Primuth actually bringing that up, because that was something I wanted to go over with John. So maybe what we can do is take another look at it and see if we can come up with something for next month when we report back. And if not, that we can give it further consideration and then come back with phase 2. Okay, so if nothing else. I'm sorry,
Chair Wilson.
Yes,
just
please.
to quickly, I guess, refresh some of the public comments. I know staggered start times has always been suggested, and just out of curiosity, in the past few months, has Holy Family been contacted? Are they receptive to making changes? Is this a planning issue that might be solvable through their conditions of approval or something like that? It seems like it's an operational issue. I'm not sure how willing, or I haven't heard how willing Holy Family has been, I guess. Or maybe I'm just completely new to this. I don't know the history of the communications between city and Holy Family Church.
No, you raised, I raised that very challenge with one of the concerned residents that, is that a mobility commission issue or is that a planning issue? And to answer your question, neither John nor I has, as far as I know, have reached out directly to the church to discuss staggering their start times. I know that's been an issue that's been ongoing for some time, and Councilmember Primuth can maybe more fill us in on that. But I know that's a concern. There's been talk that it was something that was required to have happened some time ago, but that's really not within our purview, I don't think. all we can do is, take a look at the information provided in the neighborhood traffic management plan that was provided to us some time ago, review do our field review and the circumstances, and see if that's supported, if it's supportable, and then maybe recommend it. But the problem right now for us is that, as John mentioned, is that we're not seeing crossover, right? That as we sit here, because the way the high school is operating during this pandemic, the start times are staggered. So, but we know that's temporary, but we're not seeing this crossover problem right now. Commissioner Hughes.
One thing to share, and this goes back a bit, and it's more, I think, to share for Council Member Primuth, but a few years ago, the issue of parking around Holy Family and the timing of parking and what was allowed in parking for hours, particularly on Sundays, was a concern of Holy Family, and they came and reached out and wanted the parking changed so that their parishioners were not going to get tickets. I don't know if Commissioner Fisher and Chair Abelson remember this, and there was accommodation made to make that adjustment to support Holy Family, so their parishioners were not going to get tickets. So the city reached out and made adjustments on behalf of demands or requests from Holy Family. So it should be remembered in any discussions that accommodations were made for them, for their benefit. And it would be nice, again, if there are issues, that they might do the same for the city regarding adjustments, particularly when it looks at drop off or recommendations as things become more normalized.
So I'll make a couple of comments. I remember that. And I think what it was is it was a 1 hour zone, and it was expanded to address the concerns. And that's on Rollin, I believe, is where that happened.
Correct.
The other thought to Commissioner Liu's point is that these issues are traffic related, and we could certainly address those. They seem to be planning related, and perhaps they're also public safety related. So it seems like there are a few different departments and commissions that might have the ability to provide input on this issue. I mean, I know John and I are very comfortable attacking them and coming up with solutions that we think will work to deal with what we know to be a problem. But this conflict issue, unfortunately, we haven't seen it. So it's sort of hard for us to make a recommendation or do anything in that regard. But it doesn't mean it's not there. That's why I was sort of thinking maybe the two phases.
Sorry, Chair, but I just want to clarify that.
Yes.
I guess I was misunderstanding what the public comments meant by staggered start times, because I thought it was in relation to just Holy Family to stagger their student start times. If the queuing issue is on Ramona is strictly related to Holy Family. So I've seen private schools where they've do half the student body at 8 and the next 8:30, but then there's also pushback from private schools about starting all at the same time for morning prayer or whatever it may be. So anyways, that was
I don't think
confusion.
I don't think that's what they're asking. They're asking the church start at one time and the high school start at a different time, and they're asking the church to make that adjustment. So I'm glad you pointed that out. Councilmember Primuth.
Yes, just briefly, the neighbors and Holy Family have had, I think, 2 meetings mediated by the city. And there's some really good background information from those memos. So the ad hoc may want to look at those memos. And then in case none of you know, I actually live on Ramona between Rollin and Oak. So I see the line almost every day as I'm leaving. So I appreciate the ad hoc's work on this issue, but I just want to let you know I see what you're seeing.
Thank you. That was a great conversation, actually. So Commissioner Fisher and I will follow up over the next month, and we'll also follow up to get those memos, Councilmember Primuth, you mentioned, so that we can be as informed as possible when we come back. Next up, I think I yelled too much at the game. I'm losing my voice. I apologize. Item 8, discussion of local return measure M projects for fiscal year 2022. Garrett, has there been any, is there any update in terms of some of the thoughts that we had shared in prior meetings in terms of what you've been able to find out, or in terms of feasibility and such?
Yeah, so Shahid was able to speak with the director over in San Marino. And there's not a stone wall for some of those projects along Garfield. It would just, you know, they would be open to them, but we would need, you know, to be a certain distance along, you know, so we could meet with them and, you know, do a presentation and stuff. So there was some progress there, which was good on those projects. So that's the only update I have for all of you today. I am still working on that master list of, you know, proposed projects, you know, from the commission or staff. I did get yours, your list, Kim. That's very helpful. But I have, you know, I have not had time to finish it to bring it to your attention. But it is my intention to have it next meeting for everyone to see, because I also believe it'll be helpful for the new deputy director to have as well. So.
Well, that's great. Thank you. And in terms of timing, we're okay. In terms of any deadlines to submit resubmit our projects to the Joint Powers
Yeah,
Authority.
I'll have to double check, but I think we have till the end of 2022 to spend the money, so we should be fine.
Okay. Anybody have anything they wish to comment on or share in this regard before we move on? Seeing no hands. Okay, we'll move on to, thank you, Garrett and Commissioner Hughes. Item 9, COVID-19 Ad Hoc Committee, Metro Open Streets Grant. So I will turn it over to our friends, Commissioners Liu and Dunlap. And I did ask Leona to share with the group the item coming up tomorrow night on the City Council's agenda in this regard. So anything you all would either of you would like to share with us, please?
Thank you.
Again.
Okay, got it, Eric.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Chair. So over the past month, we continue to work with Active SGD to scope items such as community engagement items, ideas for a possible reconfiguration, as well as working to kind of finalize the scope a little bit more before presenting to the City Council and city staff for their review and consideration. And through that, Active SGB was working through city staff, through Margaret at Planning, to present on that. And it's our understanding that tomorrow night there's an item before council for their consideration related to the repurposing of the Open Streets Grant funding. Garrett, maybe I can turn it over to you and you can share a little bit about each item.
Yeah, so I know we're going out for RFPs on the projects. So there's the bollards, the slow streets, and the one other, and it escapes me.
Traffic study.
I'm sorry, what was that, Kim?
Traffic studies.
Oh, the studies, correct, for mission, and yeah, so those are all going to go out. I think as Shahid had mentioned earlier, and we had discussed a little bit, I think maybe before you were here, Chair Abelson, that the bollard estimate is quite high because we're unsure on if we're going to need to do excavation and utility studies to be able to accommodate pneumatic or electrical automatic bollards, or if we'll be having them raised by hand, like spring assisted and stuff like that. So so that is why that's there. The traffic studies, I think I think the estimation is good. It came from Shahid, so I trust his ballpark figure there. And for the slow streets, I think it's the intention for us to work with whoever gets us a rough estimate of street segments, and then we would bring it to this commission. I'm not sure if that has changed, but that's still the impression I'm under. And then we would then, you know, get council's approval on those specific segments for the slow streets. And I know we've been asked about some yard signs and some additional things that we would ask for as well.
So I do have a couple questions, Garrett, because I know we were working pretty closely with Active on this, and it seems like this will need to go out to bid again, or an RFP will need to be developed instead of amending the existing agreement with Active SGB. One thing I don't want to lose, and maybe Commissioner Liu can chime in too, is when we were sort of brainstorming a study, like a feasibility study, I wouldn't necessarily say it was we're evaluating the feasibility of it. We think this is really more of a community decision. And so when we're kind of thinking about alternatives, whatever the configuration might be, it's really important that we engage the businesses, engage the community robustly, you know, like door-to-door knocking. I think we even threw a couple ideas in there, like as far as just really comprehensive engagement and outreach, because I think whatever that configuration is, you know, if it stays what it is today, or maybe it's one lane in one direction and two in the other, whatever, more than an engineering decision, I think that's really like a community decision. And so as part of that study, we want to make sure that it's not so much just engineering like the numbers, but then also really engaging the community to make sure that what it's recommended from it is something that there's buy-in from.
Yeah, I believe the intention was always to kind of have a couple of options, and then, you know, whether it's an impact or a feasibility study would then say, hey, these are the three things you're looking at. Here's what they would do. What would you like? And I think that was the intention. I'll confirm with Margaret that that's still where we're at, but that was always my impression, that it was going to be, you know, do we close a lane in each direction? Do we know, once, you know, COVID's over, do we just do nothing, you know, and just remove the K-rail, you know, like, and because I do understand the history of working with the chamber and planning, that the K-rail did come to mixed reviews. So I definitely think outreach with, you know, via the chamber and the local businesses and the residents is necessary to make sure that, you know, we may not make everyone perfectly happy, but, you know, we want to, you know, please the majority as best we can while being safe.
Yeah, and thanks, Garrett. And I guess one more question then that I have is, I noticed that the study said a temporary demonstration, you know, study the feasibility of a temporary demonstration. And I know that these open street grant funds have to be spent before the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken. And, you know, that really doesn't leave us a lot of time to do a temporary demonstration. You know, if you think by the time an RFP is issued and you select a consultant, you have your kickoff meeting and you get your plans and you engage the community, that's not a lot of time for a demonstration. So I wonder, like, what options are there? I would imagine there would be to do a very short demonstration this year. You could set up the demonstration and then later the city remove it, or you could just do all this community outreach and get something together to do like a permanent implementation. What do you like? I guess that's more of a comment, but like thoughts on that, like the time frame.
Yeah, it's definitely tight, but I can tell you, staff is working really hard on it. It's not so much me, but more Margaret, and she has the drafted RFPs ready, as far as I'm aware. So she did get that done, which is sometimes a pretty big time sink. So yeah, I think as we get closer, once we have clear direction from council tomorrow on how everything's going to shake out, I definitely think it'll be full speed ahead, and we'll have a better idea of what that picture looks like.
Thanks.
Mhm.
And then I'll turn it on to my fellow ad hoc member. Commissioner Liu, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you raised my biggest question was about timing mostly. I know when we developed the scope and the kind of draft budget along with what we thought would be included in it, and then it went to city staff, we realized that you guys definitely have a better idea of what things would actually cost. So it's a little, adjusted from what we started out with. I guess you answered my question about the timing thing. I was a little concerned about, I thought it was just a conversion of the study, and I didn't understand that this would be going back out to bid, while trying to complete the project in the same time frame.
Yeah, that's a relatively new development.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Kim?
Thank you so much. Quick question, couple quick questions. The city of Los Angeles is considering and working forward with al fresco dining becoming permanent, and didn't know if that's something that's under consideration and that we should take into consideration for the city, if that's been mentioned, the chamber, anybody, and how that would affect our configurations, our ballards and the K-rails and all of that. Also, when I look at the slow streets, and this is maybe clarification for both Commissioner Liu and Dunlap, when it talks about that the connectivity to multi-unit housing and key destinations, does that limit us looking more at the west side of the city or part of the Huntington Drive corridor? Or are we thinking, because when I look at what Pasadena's done and a lot of what they're doing, slow street signage and such, they've had a lot of it is on the residential, where they've had children with bicycles, a lot of pedestrians, dog walking and such. Are we limiting ourselves here, or is there flexibility? Was one of my questions. And then the studies, if we look at the study for Mission, we did do a study a couple years ago, or a pilot, where we did close off lanes on Mission temporarily before pandemic a number of years ago, maybe 10 years ago. And I don't know what those numbers are, the results of that was. So I just don't know if that's something for us to look back on too.
So to answer the first question about keeping the alfresco, I have heard it kicked around that's something that is an option.
Because what Los Angeles is saying is that they're thinking of keeping at least for another year or so, because part of the thought is that restaurants who've been closed gives them another opportunity. Again, you can space out more, and they can also increase their volume of capacity to try to make up for, a year's worth of lost revenue potentially, or whatever.
Yeah.
Also, it gives you that outdoor ability for, air circulation and such versus interiors.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I know has been talked about. I don't know the reception of that. I'd have to follow up on that, but I know it has been talked about it, and I think that's part of some of those studies on Mission would be to permanently keep it, and then figure out if there's initiative for citywide, allowing parking lot conversions and stuff like that, for not just in right-of-way dining kind of thing. So it has been talked about, and but some of that's kind of a blend of public works and planning. So I'll need to follow up.
Thank you.
Garrett, actually, I have one more question. And thank you, Commissioner Hughes, for bringing up the line about the multi-unit housing. That's a little new to me too, as part of the Slow Streets program. And I'm wondering if there's flexibility in this item to use that item maybe for maybe things that may be more relevant later on in the year. So if we're going into fall, and kids are fully back in school, do we still want to commit this much to the Slow Streets program? Is this I guess the amount just surprised me, the adjusted amount for the Slow Streets program. I thought it was much lower in the draft I've seen previously.
Yeah, so personally, as things opening up, streets were as needed. Especially like if the mask thing and everything, California opens, we're already in the yellow tier. If that kicks us into quote unquote normal, I personally, I raised the questions. I haven't received an answer, but it is something to consider. That's smart. So the question's been asked that we just don't have an answer at the moment.
Okay, I just want to emphasize that it seems like the amount is rather large, and I have been personally in talks with other cities in the San Gabriel Valley about what the next steps of the Slow Streets program would look like, and it seems like the general consensus is more of a how do we wind this down by the school year? How do we transition this to a school safety type of program? Because like you're right, people like social distancing will not be on the forefront of people's minds, and if there's a way we can fit this within the grant, but also use it for something that may be more pertinent or more flexible for us come fall. And, yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And, I'll take that with me when I speak to the stakeholders.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
You're muted, Larry.
Someone's out to get me. Disconnected for a couple minutes and I'm back. So I just wanted to provide a counterpoint to, I think, what I heard from Commissioner Liu. And when this came up, and this also answers Commissioner Hughes's part of her question earlier. When this came up at the beginning of the year, it was understood that part of this money would be used to support the business's own mission, whether it's the closure of one lane in each direction or whatever other enhancements can be made to their use of the public space. And that money would also be used to assist and support slow streets in neighborhoods. And I get the point that, well, we're emerging from the pandemic, so what do we need to do slow streets for? And my thought is, one, we haven't emerged yet. I mean, I'm hopeful that it's soon. But second, and more importantly, I think that one of the lasting effects of the pandemic is the way it has changed the methods that people, or the methods people use for travel, the way they use the roads. I don't think the different modes of use on the streets are going away simply because we're emerging out of the pandemic. I think, we've have more walkers, more joggers, more bikers, more everything using the roads than we did before. And I think that's going to persist. So I think it's very important to reserve the use of funds for slow streets, which is what we told Metro we were doing, by the way. And which is in the scope of work that City Council is approving tomorrow night. So we have to make sure that we're consistent with what we're telling Metro we're doing and what was approved to be done by the City Council months ago. Just a thought. But
so
oh, go ahead, Garrett. Sorry.
I'm sorry. So just a quick follow-up, and maybe this is my lack of institutional knowledge on traffic, but if we do put a substantial amount of money away into slow streets, and as like maybe we do need to wind things back, could we then, I guess the question would be, could we put it more into like a share the road kind of campaign where it's watching out for pedestrians and bicyclists, because those habits are ingrained now after a year and a half. And I know share the road is technically usually for bikes, but is that program also for pedestrians? That's kind of my clarifying question. I'm not sure.
I mean, that's the way I read it. And the way these funds, I'm thinking about the presentation that Active STV gave to us a couple of months ago. as a sponsor of this endeavor. And it talked about various different devices that are used. And, you know, what I had suggested at one of our last meetings is that, you know, slow streets can be a bunch of different things in residential neighborhoods, right? It could be, right, share the road, watch out for cyclists and heads and so forth, signage in the middle of the streets, but it can also be measures to slow traffic and calm traffic in residential neighborhoods, you know, quick build type projects, whether it's, you know, tape or striping or markers, bollards, things like that, to slow traffic on streets where there are different uses or there are concerns about safety. And I was thinking specifically about Meridian at Maple, but there are different areas in town. So I'm with you. I think there's certainly flexibility, but I think, and there's support within the description of the revised scope to do the things that you talked about and that we've intended. So I would just be concerned about walking away from all of that. Because the pandemic is coming to an end. That's all.
Yeah, I think
the other thing, oh, go ahead, Garrett.
Yeah. So I think as, you know, new information comes out and, you know, we see what, you know, where the world is at, if we need to make those adjustments, it seems like we have the flexibility to use the money wisely.
Right, agreed. And the list of streets to confirm was a preliminary list put together by staff, but it is not the list. It's not a firm list of right. So that's, and that's supposed to come back to us to talk about what streets would be the scene for those types of devices. So just a comment there. And then with regard to the city council agenda item tomorrow night, you know, there are 4 aspects to it. One is executing the amendment with Metro for the rescoped use of the rescoped funds. One is moving ahead with the RFP to get the bollards going for the farmers market area. And then 2 others are an RFP for a consultant to implement the Slow Streets program. And then the other is the studies that we've already been mentioned. And I think there's a lot of concern, and it's the city council's action item about the sort of abrupt change from where it seemed like we were headed, which was amending the existing agreement with SGV to reflect the rescoped project, moving away from that to an RFP, which would go out, and then anybody could submit, you know, proposals, and then we'd be potentially starting from scratch with a new vendor, consultants, and so forth. And I'm just concerned about it because, you know, that we've been working with active SGV, not me personally, but the city for quite some time on this project. So it would seem like there might be a steep learning curve if we were going to start opening it up to bring someone else in. And it seems like the rescoped project is similar enough to the original project that amendment would seem to be appropriate. I'm not a government contracts lawyer, but those are my thoughts. And I'm just concerned because, as has been brought up, we're supposed to spend this money by the end of the year. And it sounds like a long way off, but it isn't. And if we're going to go out with an RFP for potentially a new outfit to implement this program, we're going to be down the road another month, because the earliest it could be done, is my understanding, is July 7th that we'd enter into a contract. Whereas if we amend, we could do that potentially in the next council meeting. So it's really not an action item for anybody here. I just wanted to share the concern about starting sort of potentially all over with a new group when it seems like we have momentum and knowledge and experience with the group that we've been working with. So it's just a concern that I think some others have about that. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts. I'm just not really clear on why it sort of changed, but it just causes me a little concern. Commissioner Hughes.
I just had a quick question, and Garrett, this is maybe more, if we do make this adjustment and go out, one of the things I'm hearing, and I'm sure, and my fellow commissioners who are experts in transportation, you might have heard, but I know from a construction standpoint, materials are getting very difficult to get. Concrete, obviously lumber, all sorts of materials are difficult right now. Manufacturing stopped during the pandemic. Transportation got halted with the Suez Canal. There was all sorts of different things, but that materials are getting difficult. So is there any concern that if we are going out, if there's things that we need all of the ballards, that we can get delivery, that we can fulfill our needs and contracts and timelines by the end of the year?
Yeah, I think we'll be okay with bollards and that kind of stuff. It's I can follow up with a couple of the manufacturers to see if there's if they foresee anything but a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, the last time I talked with some of the vendors, they didn't, we had talked about the end of the year deadline, and obviously materials would need to be here in the fall or late summer, and that no one seemed to have any concerns at that time. And then
do you have any? Go ahead.
Oh, and I was gonna say, as for the reason why we went from amending it to going out to RFPs, I believe there was an internal discussion and staff felt that it was a safer route to go to follow these purchasing guidelines, but I wasn't involved with those conversations, so I don't have a definitive answer for you on that front.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Dunlap.
I do have a question along that line. If it's going to go out to an RFP, I know that this is a Metro Open Streets grant, I believe like cycle 3. And if you look at the awards for those grants, a lot of them are jurisdictions partner with community-based organizations. Is that who we would be working with? Like, who would be responding to the RFP? Would it be a community-based organization doing the Slow Streets program?
I definitely think like a group like Active SGV would bid.
Okay.
So I don't, but we also could get private firms as well. I don't think, I'm not intimately familiar with the language in the agreement that if we have to go with a community-based organization or if a private firm could bid, that I don't. I'd have to look into.
Yeah, I maybe Commissioner Liu can highlight too. The Slow Streets program are not. They're not. They take work, and they take a lot of. They're very resource intensive to implement, and so I think it would be really advantageous to have a community-based organization, just cost-wise, because you're going to need someone to help you manage the program as things get hit and knocked over, and you have to replace signs and those sorts of things.
Yeah,
nothing to add, so that's good.
Yeah, just Larry knows the couple of slow street signs we have around Arroyo, they require quite some maintenance, and staff isn't always able to keep up with it. So I understand.
Thank you, everyone. I got a note that there was public comment for this item, so I want to make sure I didn't miss that. Leona?
I do have one.
All right.
It's from Ellen Deagle, I believe. It says, we ask that the commission review our petition attached and letter below and urge the commission to recommend to the city council agenda on item number 7, moving forward with the number 1 amendment with Metro and number 4 RFP for bollards on Meridian Avenue. We feel that the RFP suggested in number 2 and 3 are premature and ultimately unnecessary. We can't afford to spend more time and money on studies and need to start a bottoms-up approach for Mission Street with the merchants as soon as possible, and the actions we outlined above will jumpstart the process. It says, dear Mayor and council members, as Mission Street businesses that are still recovering from one of the most challenging years in our living history, we submitted the attached petition to you on April 1st, 2021, in an effort to encourage the city to act swiftly in repurposing funds that were approved by Metro to support COVID business recovery and pedestrian safety. In our joint letter, Mission Street businesses owners explicitly requested that the project engage businesses early and throughout the process. However, after patiently waiting for 6 weeks, we only learned that staff had not heeded either of these simple requests when the agenda for your next meeting was posted this week. Item number 7 makes clear that a decision to study design alternative before stakeholders have had an opportunity to weigh in was already made, and that staff is pursuing a timeline that will not allow even the design process to begin before July. That's all I have.
Thank you, Leona.
You're welcome.
Just in light of that, Commissioner Liu or Commissioner Dunlap, any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I think my comment is kind of hearing about it, just a public comment. Yeah, I agree. It would, whatever study, I want to make sure that it's something that can be implemented, whether a plan be required or something that we can move forward with versus a deliverable that's a report with a recommendation from a consultant. So I concur that it's more important to the businesses. I've seen the petition and they're supportive of us really moving forward with this. And so whatever we can do to make sure that we get to implementation and get to action, I'm supportive of. More than a study, we just a recommendation that then we need to make a decision on.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Liu, any thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with the comment, and I understand their concerns. It's a little, I don't want to say assume, but I am assuming that these recommendations and that these 4 items are operating independently of each other on the same timeline. So the study is not dependent on the bollard, and the bollard is not dependent on the study. Am I correct in assuming that, Garrett?
Yeah, I would think so. Because I think where we're at with the bollards is that we want to do them for public safety reasons. And it's more of a what's the best solution and not whether or not we're going to do it. And then I think going into any kind of study for what we would do on mission would have that allowance that, hey, we can shut Meridian between El Centro and Mission when we need to, and that may factor in, to what suggestion, because we could, do a food truck night or a hey, bring out your stall, from the local businesses, like someone from Shiro could come down and cook, or, they, have booths and stuff, we could do a lot with it, and that could affect, the mission study. So I think, but I don't think that if one thing went, I don't think they're interdependent. So is a
Okay,
short way of
so-
saying my long answer.
Oh no, that's good to hear. So I just don't want, the bollards or things that we all want to be held up by these other items. And it sounds like that the study would have kind of a long-term utility for whenever we want to.
Yeah, and I can't
Modify.
imagine after the lessons we learned with the K-Rail that we wouldn't include the opinion of the local businesses throughout mission. I can't imagine that we would make that faux pas.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers all my questions, and thank you, Chair Abelson, for clarifying kind of the agreement with Metro. So that we're in some case in some items we're obliged to try certain things, and thank you for clarifying the flexibility and type of the slow streets implementation and tools and items that we can purchase with this. So that sounds good to me. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you. You're welcome. And thank you very much. And I appreciate Commissioners Dunlap and Liu, your work on this item. And at the end of the day, right, it's on the council. I guess we were talking about item 7, that's the city council agenda tomorrow night. And there are 4 different items in there, and I guess they can approve or not, one or more of them. And they work together, but separately. So hopefully we can move forward on some of this and meet our deadlines and get some things going for the businesses and for the neighborhoods, because that's really at the end of the day what we want to see is deliverables, right? So thank you to everyone for that. And oh wait, there's a hand.
Quick question to share with our council member, that if there's something that if there's going to be virtual meetings with the businesses or such, that I would be happy, and I'm sure my fellow commissioners would be happy to help participate in those or attend them or be made aware or help in any way to make sure that all of the community is engaged in this process, because we do have a short window.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that comment. I think any outreach that is done would probably need to be hosted either through the staff, or I would think the commission would be a logical place to kind of host an outreach event for the business community. So I'd probably rely on Chair Abelson's thoughts on that, but certainly I'd entertain that.
Thank you.
And I think we'd be happy to help organize and support outreach and get things going. So I think let's see what happens at tomorrow night's council meeting, and then maybe we can talk about and maybe I can connect with Commissioner Dunlap or Commissioner Loom. We could talk about next steps. So thank you all. Another great discussion. We have lots of those. So I have a favor to ask, but I want to make sure that I'm understood Vice Chair Fisher correctly hours ago when he told me that items 10, 11, and 12 on the agenda had already been covered. Did I understand that?
That's correct.
Correctly?
Yes.
The head is nodding. So fantastic. I have, if you would indulge me, I have one announcement to make, that I think might be of interest to the group, which would have been in my comments. And I'll be quick, I promise. I hear no huge objection. So I just wanted to share, and some of you may already know, the city of Alhambra, I think it's tomorrow night, May 19th. It's May 19th tomorrow night, I believe so. At 6 p.m., looks like it's 6 to 7:30. They are having a community meeting to discuss plans they have to implement mobility improvements that might be of interest to our city and our commission here. And they include converting the 710 stub from a 6-lane freeway into a 4-lane arterial between the I-10 710 interchange and Valley, and upgrading 3 key I-10 interchanges at Fremont, Atlantic, and Garfield. I think there's probably some interesting information that would be helpful for us to know about what's going on in our neighboring community. And I'm wondering, I'll make an effort, but I'm just wondering if anybody might be willing to take on watching the meeting and reporting at our next meeting.
Mr. Chair, I would like to do that, but unfortunately, my fiance is having eye surgery tomorrow, and I'm then the caretaker, so I don't know what condition he'll be in.
All right, you're excused.
So
yeah,
if he goes to sleep and is sleeping and all that, then for sure.
Chair Abelson, I'm unable to watch the meeting or attend the meeting tomorrow evening, but I also at the beginning of the meeting before you jumped on, I saw that same notice, and I'm glad you brought up the community meeting. And we talked with Director Abbas about it, and he said that it's a project he's aware of, and that he has been coordinating to the best degree possible with Alhambra, and as well as I think he mentioned that there have been several presentations, preliminary presentations, and he also expressed concerns and some comments on the study, particularly around the models and how it was showing traffic, like a street was getting closed or getting open, and it seemed like the volumes, how they were shifting was a little counterintuitive to what you might have what you
Wow.
might imagine.
Okay. Well,
So,
well, again, my fault for not being here the first half hour, and I apologize to keep you guys longer. I'm glad that staff's aware of it. You guys already talked about it. I will make an effort to watch it tomorrow night. I'll do my best, and if I am, to share any thoughts at our next meeting. But I'm glad Director Boss is on it as well. So with that, unless there is anything else at this very late hour, I will. Oh, sorry, Garrett.
Just one quick reminder, we will be moving to live public participation for the next InTech meeting. So you'll see an adjustment in the agenda. We won't take the pre-done written comment anymore. We'll switch over to Zoom presenter, where people will raise their hand, for general public comment, and then on each chime in if they do have a public comment, and they'll be limited to 3 minutes. So you'll see how it works if you're able to either watch the council meeting live tomorrow night, or later as it's recorded, and that's our format will be similar.
Okay, great. Well, thank
so
you.
just an FYI.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you for letting us know. I appreciate that. Okay, with that, I'll move that we adjourn for the evening. Any objection? All right. Well, thank you all for attending. Thank you all for indulging me. I apologize for the late arrival and the glitches, but hopefully it's a one-time deal. And everybody have a good evening, and thank you for your hard, terrific work for the entire community.
Well, on to your victory in the next game, right?
That's right. On to the semifinals. Thank you all so much.